Chapter 676. The press conference in the morning ended in a hubbub. Many of the other filmmakers showed up one after another. Then, a group of people sat down and talked for a while about their expectations for the movie. By 11 o'clock in the morning, most of the people had left. Ren Chong and Zhao Yueling ran especially fast. On one hand, they had other jobs to catch up on, and on the other hand, they were forced to stay for Chen Guang's big news. In their eyes, no matter who invested, it would not change the final outcome of the film. Jiang Yage and Jin Shirui were actually busier than Ren Chong and Zhao Yueling. It was just that the two women had been sacrificing their own time for Chen Guang's time. Now that the matter was settled, the two had to fly back to London in the afternoon to record songs. The recording of the new album had just begun, and the company in London had already complained a lot about stopping for 2 days. No matter how noisy it was on the internet, since things had been settled, they had to do it well. Chen Guang was too lazy to care about the rumors on the internet. No matter what they said, it would be more useful to shoot a set of trailer scenes. In a sense, other people's doubts about him were not wrong. They were not slandering him for no reason. What they said was well-founded and reasonable. Big Beard Deng still had a casting meeting in the afternoon, which was held at the Chinese Academy of Drama. Chen Guang had nothing to do, so he followed Big Beard Deng to watch the fun. The poor assistant, Yang Shi, was thrown to Chen Guang by Big Beard Deng again. His task was to become Chen Guang's shadow. To put it nicely, he was to explain the new script to Chen Guang, but in fact, it was just to give him special training before the movie officially started. Acting depended 70% on talent and 30% on hard work. It seemed profound, but in fact there was a systematic training method. Ordinary people would not know where to start and would only feel that it was like a cow eating a pumpkin. But in fact, domestic film and television colleges had their own set of methods. A first-line director like Big Beard Deng had a unique way of training actors. Big Beard Deng thought that since things had already turned out this way, he would save as many people as he could. Let's practice his acting skills first. If it really doesn't work, I'll just change the script and change Chen Guang's male lead into a man with facial paralysis. If he doesn't have acting skills and doesn't know how to make expressions, then he'll have facial paralysis the entire time, right? Sigh, uncle, I've been scolded like a fool since yesterday. Why does everyone insist that I can't do it? A man can't say no. In short, thank you for supporting me this time, uncle. Fortunately, you believe in me. Thanks. Walking side by side with Deng Xiaojiang on the campus of the Chinese Opera, which was, in a sense, the holy land for boys, Chen Guang said excitedly, "No matter how the world looks down on me, I'm lucky that uncle believes in me." Chen Guang was still touched. Even Jiang Yage and Jin Shirui don't believe in me. Up until now, only uncle hasn't said anything to make me sad. Yes, that's right, uncle, you're so determined to push me to the top. I understand. You're the one who thinks the most of me in the world. You're indeed a famous director. You must have a pair of eyes that can see through the minutest details and see the essence of things. You must have discovered long ago that I'm actually a genius, right? Big Beard Deng silently pondered over the script in his heart. I don't believe you, I'm the one who regrets it the most, okay? I, Deng Xiaojiang, have been making movies all my life, and it's not like I've never been scolded as a lousy movie before. But so far, even if it's a failed movie, maybe it's because the consciousness was too advanced, or maybe it's because the story was too profound, or maybe it's because of funding problems during the shooting period. The only thing that has never been a failure was because the actors weren't good enough. For example, Black Chicken, which is now recognized as a prophecy of God. Dinner is even more shocking after being scrutinized by a large number of film critics. At that time, I was also scolded, but after being scolded, people could still find some of the things I wanted to express from the movies I made, and it also gave me a sense of superiority in terms of intelligence. But this time, sigh, why did I change the script like that? Deng Xiaojiang wanted to chop off his own hand. Little Chin, have you read the new script? I haven't had the time. Is there a problem? Oh, then you'd better wait until I'm done. I want to make another change. I should make your character look colder. That is, no matter if you're happy, sad, or angry, you should always be able to maintain a calm and unflinching state. It'll be especially cool. Uncle, you're talking about facial paralysis, right? No, how can that be, ha? Chen Guang silently removed Deng Xiaojiang from the list of people on our side. So this guy doesn't trust me either. If it wasn't for the fact that he had trained in the acting world, he actually didn't even want to play the supporting role. But now was different from the past, and he was no longer the ignorant person he used to be. He was also eager to prove himself in the field of acting. After all, what if he was lucky enough to earn a statue of the best actor? That was a statue of the one-line sky level. Although he didn't know how much stronger it was compared to the statue of Jianling Tian, it was still worth looking forward to. Perhaps this wasn't something that could be achieved overnight, but at least you guys have to let me take the first solid step. Therefore, this women not only had to be acted, but it had to be acted well. It had to be performed with grace and charm. It had to be so good that people would be sincerely convinced and not have any doubts. Well, in a sense, Uncle Big Beard's friendship with me is really good. With his reputation on the internet, he can easily catch an A-list celebrity and scold him for half an hour. He's so harsh. He obviously looks down on me, but he still stubbornly supports me. It's basically like burning the golden signboard that he built for so many years to send me to a hot air balloon. Uncle, I really thank you for your stubbornness. You're really great. No, I won't play the role of facial paralysis. I won't do it even if you beat me to death. Although Big Beard understood Qin Guang's feelings, Qin Guang was aiming for the best actor throne. So how could he become paralyzed before he could even become an emperor? If that happened, it wouldn't be easy for him to make a comeback in the entertainment industry. Hence he couldn't agree to it. Seeing that Big Beard Deng still wanted to persuade him, Qin Guang said again, "Actually, Uncle, how can I not see which version of the script you're most satisfied with? You don't want to film a half-baked character that you're not satisfied with, right? Why don't you try? Have some confidence." AI. Big Beard Deng sighed. He thought to himself, forget it. When the time comes, the boat will cross the bridge. I'll prepare 2 sets of scripts first. When the time comes, I can't say anything if he messes up a few more times. I'll just change the character's personality, but it won't affect the overall shooting plan. Yang Shi, come over and tell Qin Guang about the new script first. I'll go and choose the actors first. Big Beard said and left Qin Guang and Yang Shi outside the venue. Qin Guang actually wanted to go in and watch the excitement, but he was also curious about what the new script was like. After some hesitation, he dragged Yang Shi to the water bar near the venue. Unlike normal schools, Chinese opera students rarely went home even during the summer. Most of them stayed in school to wait for opportunities, go to Hengyan for filming or study on their own. The acting industry looked glamorous, but it was full of sweat and tears. One had to have real skills. Even the queen of bad movies, who was always criticized like a vase, actually had acting skills. But acting skills alone weren't enough. There were some rules in this industry that couldn't be avoided. Didn't a genius actress like Zhao Yueling also have some dirt on her in H-Disc? Did she really like that kind of thing? Not necessarily. Walking in the pugilistic world, people couldn't help themselves. People like Jin and Jiang, who had strong backings, who were fearless and could control their own fate, were few and far between. The decorated water bar was located in a curved hall with floor-to-ceiling glass, covering an area of about 200 to 300 square meters. The afternoon sun shone through the light brown glass into the hall, bringing a warmth that couldn't be dispersed. White bookshelves, white wind chimes, white piano. The entire water bar reverberated with Rang Hisaishi's piano piece 4 Castle in the Sky. Beautiful boys and girls gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, whispering to each other in the water bar. Sometimes they would make high-pitched sounds as if they were rehearsing for a play. Yang Shi sat on a chair, spread out the script and placed it in front of Qin Guang. "I really miss it. Brother Yang, did you graduate from this school?" Qin Guang asked as he marked down a latte on the waiter's list. Yang Shi nodded. "Yeah, I used to be like them. I would bring a few classmates here to rehearse and discuss plays and stuff. Brother Yang used to be a successful person." Qin Guang could hear the pride in his words and teased. Yang Shi sighed again. "Yeah, I really didn't encounter any setbacks in the past. Before I met you, there was no stain in my life." However, he quickly reacted to the dispiritedness in his voice and pulled himself together. "But Director Deng is right. How can everything go smoothly for a person? Without experiencing some setbacks, how can you understand the beauty of seeing the rainbow after the storm? Alright, let's look at the script." Qin Guang had already memorized the old script, but it was the first time he saw the new version. The movie told the story of a retired boxer from the perspective of the female lead, Jiang Yage. This boxer used to fight desperately to cure his ex-girlfriend, Jin Shirue, until he won the championship and stood on top of the world. However, his ex-girlfriend, who was terminally ill, eventually passed away. After that, the disheartened boxer chose to retire, took over his ex-girlfriend's craft shop, and lived an ordinary life. The female lead, played by Jiang Yage, the boxer's former fan, suddenly broke in and broke the boxer's peaceful life. This girl next door, who had just grown up, melted the retired boxer's withered heart little by little with her fiery passion and sunshine that seemed to never dissipate. Through a series of events that made people not know whether to laugh or cry, The retired boxer went from being extremely resistant to this little fan at first to slowly accepting her. Finally, under her encouragement, he put down his craft knife, put on his boxing gloves, and once again stood in the ring to prove himself. The whole story was based on the retired boxer played by Chen Guang, and Jiang Ye's struggle and never giving up. On the surface it was about the story of the boxer played by Chen Guang, but in fact, it was to promote the lively, strong and independent temperament of modern girls. The movie was temporarily named Women, but it was not about ancient wars. Instead, it was to tell people that girls born in the 90s were not the lost generation. They might be willful, stubborn, or even rebellious enough to run away from home to chase stars, even if the things they liked seemed so strange. As a girl, she was infatuated with boxing, and even more infatuated with a retired boxer. But hidden behind all the shortcomings of this girl born in the 90s was a burning heart of innocence. In the movie, Rin Chong played another successful boxer. When Chen Guang dominated the boxing world with the name of a genius, he had just made his debut, although he was older and had nothing. He felt that he was living in the shadow of Chen Guang and was treated coldly. He crazily wanted to take away everything that Chen Guang had as a boxer, including the lovely and charming Jiang Ye, who could make people feel happy just by being close to her. While Jiang Ye encouraged Chen Guang, the down-and-out retired boxer, Rin Chong launched a crazy pursuit of Jiang Ye from another angle so that the girl Jiang Ye had to face more realistic things such as money, status, family pressure, etc., forcing her to make a cruel choice between dreams and reality. At first, in order to highlight Jiang Ye's role, Chen Guang's role was diluted, and Rin Chong's role was more important as the male lead. But after a few major changes to the script, Rin Chong had to step back. As for Zhou Ye, he played a high-ranking official in the Boxing Association, and Zhao Yueling played Zhou Ye's girlfriend, who was also an influential secretary and president of the Boxing Association. Their roles were also set to be the antagonists in the movie, suppressing Chen Guang in various ways. Especially Zhao Yueling's role, she and Jiang Ye's role were polar opposites. One was young and impetuous, seemingly immature, but had a pure heart. The other was slightly older but had long been in a high position. On the surface she was a strong woman that everyone feared. She wore a lot of name tags on her and her words carried weight. She did things swiftly and decisively, but behind the glamour was an ugly soul. How is it? The script is not bad, right? It's more impactful than before, right? She was also part of the main creative team that made the major changes to the script. Although he did not have much confidence in Chen Guang's acting, people always liked to be praised. Chen Guang said strangely, "It is more impactful, but this theme seems to involve some unspoken rules in the sports world. Can it pass the review? Won't they be pinched?" She smiled proudly. "Isn't our director Deng? Isn't the female lead Jiang Ye? We're promoting positive energy in general, so how can it not pass the review?" Chen Guang said, "But then again, just looking at the script, I think this movie is quite artistic. Why is the investment so high? I can't figure it out." She rolled his eyes at him and stretched out a finger. "Do you think we want to? Just the salary of the few of you lead actors added together is already more than this amount." Chen Guang felt particularly annoyed. "After all this time, I've already taken out more than half of my money, and it turns out that I've taken back more than half of it." She shrugged. "What else can we do? Nowadays, the salaries of domestic artists are shooting up like a rocket. There's nothing we can do about it. There's a crazy influx of capital from all over the country, and there's nowhere to spend the money. This is the market trend, and even a famous director like Director Deng has to follow the market trend. A few days ago, that bunch of idiots, Guang Zhuangju, actually made a public opinion statement saying that they wanted to regulate the artists' salaries. That was nonsense. The eyes of the masses were as clear as snow. Why would they need laymen who only know how to slap their heads to pester them endlessly? This situation can only last for a year or two. Before long, the market will naturally make a choice. The ones who can last until the end are the ones with real money and real ability. Brother Chen Guang, we really need to think about it. Don't get a bad idea. We can't be a little fresh meat." Chen Guang said, "First of all, the director of the general administration will not take the blame. We don't care about this. Also, the old man must be that person with real ability. You really don't have to worry about him." As he was complaining in his heart, Shi magically took out a book from his bag. That's right. It was the book Chen Guang had already read. "Let's start with this book? Let me tell you about the basic concepts of performing arts first." Chen Guang rolled his eyes again. "I've learned this book in the world of cups. I can recite it from the last word to the first word without a problem. Come on. The front is all nonsense. Turn to the 5th page, the 2nd paragraph, the 3rd line. The original words are like this. What is performing arts? Actors play characters. Through organized actions, they create living, flesh and blood, full of personality and have artistic appeal. The basic principles of performing arts are. Yang Shi turned to the page Chen Guang mentioned in bewilderment. He glanced at it and was stunned. *CK. Can you not be such an animal? Can you not be so professional? Young man, when did you memorize it? Did we all misjudge you? Did you really come prepared? This is not scientific. Turn to the 15th page. I think there's a sentence in it that makes sense. Chen Guang felt that showing off once was not enough. He decided to beat Yang Shi to death. If he wanted to relax and not be pestered by this young man all day, he had to make him kneel first. The two chatted for an hour or two. Yang Shi took out a few books from his bag, such as Stanley's Actor's Self-Cultivation, Methods, 4 Systems of Self-Training, etc. As a result, Chen Guang could recite all of them fluently. Not only could he recite them, the key was that his understanding of these works had completely exceeded Yang Shi's imagination and realm. Yang Shi could not understand what was going on. The last time he met Chen Guang, he was still a complete novice. Only a few months had passed since then. Even if he had not proven himself in front of the camera, just based on his theoretical knowledge alone, he seemed to have completely surpassed Yang Shi, who had 7 or 8 years of experience in the industry and had already made a name for himself in the industry. The two of them were so engrossed in their conversation that they did not notice that the other student groups in the water bar had quietly gathered around the tables near them. They pricked up their ears and listened to their conversation in a daze. Yang Shi closed the last book he carried with him with a blank expression. After listening to Chen Guang's analysis, he was so ashamed that he wanted to erase all the notes he had written and drawn in the book with correction fluid. Chen Guang, I really, King give up? Damn it, your life is practically a cheat. Chapter 677. Chen Guang made a fist and palm salute. You flatter me. Do you think I can act now? Yang Shi hesitated for a while and finally said through gritted teeth, if you are not an armchair strategist like Zhao Kuo, then you can act. What Zhao Kuo? This gentleman here is a master, okay? He is even better than our teacher. The group of students had been eavesdropping for a long time. A girl could not help but loudly refute for Chen Guang. Even Chen Guang was startled. When he turned his head, a fragrance assaulted his nostrils. Holy shit. When did this girl sit beside him? He touched his face. Did I become more handsome recently? All the girls in my vicinity will be attracted to me involuntarily? Hey, isn't that Senior Yang Shi? Someone finally recognized Yang Shi. As an outstanding graduate of Chinese opera, Yang Shi was quite famous in the school. I heard that Senior Yang Shi is in the crew of women. So this is Bro Pantheon. Oh my god. Chen Guang. I am your fan. Bro Pantheon, I just scolded you on the internet yesterday. I regret it. I didn't expect Bro Pantheon to be so awesome. Bro Pantheon, can I have your autograph? Me too. Well, being famous also had its disadvantages. It was easy to be seen through. Feeling the crowd around him, especially the beautiful figures of the Chinese opera female students, Chen Guang looked calm, but his heart was as sweet as honey. I want to be famous so much. Isn't this the moment I am looking forward to? Don't push. Everyone don't push. Your breasts are making it hard for me to breathe. Everyone don't touch me. Little girl, be more reserved. Don't touch my butt. Don't. Let me tell you, if you put your hand under my crotch again once the old man's power is triggered, you will break your bones. Being famous had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that there was always an endless number of advantages to be taken advantage of in a crowd like this. The disadvantage was that even though he was feeling extremely good, he still had to maintain the appearance of a gentleman on the surface. Pain and happiness. After a long time, Chen Guang and Yang Shi finally escaped from the water bar in a panic. The casting call for Big Beard was still going on, but Yang Shi's mood was no longer the same as before. He was looking forward to seeing Chen Guang fight in front of the camera as soon as possible. If his actual combat level was even 1/10 of his theoretical knowledge, then it would be enough to support this movie. By that time, he would probably be able to become the assistant who was the best at training actors in the history of the film industry. At this time, Chen Guang received another call. Yu Hong and the others had finally settled the matter of going to Central TV. Chen Guang hung up the phone and smiled proudly at Yang Shi. I have some good news. Tomorrow, I will go to Central TV to record a program at the Guinness Conference. I want to show the world who is the best sharpener in the world. Isn't there a scene in the movie about a handicraft shop? Uncle Big Beard is really amazing. This script is actually tailor-made for me, right? In a sense, he was not wrong. When they first met, Big Beard Deng realized that Qin Guang had the potential to become a boxing star. To act as a boxer, he did not even need to deliberately go to the gym. Once he took off his jacket, he would have the body of a standard lightweight boxing champion. The identity of a handicraft shop owner and the best sharpener in history was also a perfect match. Qin Guang patted Yang Shi on the shoulder. If you want to create hype, we have hype. If you want to act, we have acting skills. Follow me well. I will bring you guys along to show off and fly. Yang Shi was shocked by this master's confidence. Later that night, the two went their separate ways. Qin Guang had a meeting with the 4 mid-level executives of Qingguang Agency early in the morning to discuss tomorrow's Guinness Conference recording. On the other hand, Yang Shi was gesticulating in front of Big Beard Deng about what happened today. Unfortunately, Big Beard did not believe him. But when he heard that Qin Guang had decided to cooperate with the production team and decided to pay for CCTV, Big Beard was very touched. He was most afraid that this young man did not know his place and only wanted to act well. Now it seemed that he was very self-aware. He knew that the East is not bright, the West is bright. We can save our acting skills for now. But if we can create hype, we can at least guarantee the box office. Thinking about it, Big Beard felt sorry for himself. I used to be so strict. People said that when I did something, it was either I don't do it or I do it. Now that things have come to this, am I finally going to walk the same path as other directors? Now, I can only rely on hype to increase the box office. Is it the distortion of human nature or the abnormality of the market? Alright, stop lamenting. That's it. Yang Shi, you should go and follow him. I will arrange for people to cooperate with him. If he is really successful in the handicraft industry, he can really make a big deal out of the movie. So, you go. After leaving the Chinese Opera Academy alone, Qin Guang wanted to go and see Wu Tong. But when he called, he found that Chief Wu's work was so heavy that it made people's hair stand on end. Just today she was outside with the people from the Key Case Investigation Unit. It was said that an international criminal had quietly sneaked into Yanjing. The matter was more troublesome than expected. The entire Yanjing police force was secretly working together to maintain public security. Wu Tong could not escape. Although Wu Tong was now the chief of the Guangzhou district branch, she still had the habit of taking the lead. She did not say anything when something happened. She would lead the team and the others would follow. Qin Guang did not feel good. Originally, Wu Tong should have stayed in the 5 capitals and enjoyed her life as a second generation. Now she was trapped in Yanjing and could not move. Come to think of it, it was his responsibility. As a deputy chief, he was always idling around. She was a division chief. This was the real working state. Don't work too hard. What if something happens to you? How am I going to live? Qin Guang said half jokingly and half seriously on the phone. Wu Tong was sitting in the command vehicle, chatting with him. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm an outstanding student from Shund. I have real swords and guns in my hands. I'm leading the charge not because I'm some random girl, but because of my fists. Come, I'll call someone over for you to listen to. Little Tong, tell me, who was the champion of the women's division in the Yanjing police system fighting competition last month? It's our Chief Wu. Invincible. Unifying the underworld. Okay, I won't let you show off here. Let's talk another day. I suspect that the terrorists who sneaked in this time are related to Xuelin. We haven't contacted Xuelin for almost half a month. In the end, Wu Tong could not help but tell Qin Guang about it. Qin Guang silently hung up the phone. He sympathized with the good comrades in Wu Tong's branch who were on the front line of the war. As for Xuelin, he sank his mind into the world in the cup again. His heart was at ease. So far, the only fanatic was still sending him faith points. The thread was still strong. Perhaps he was just hiding and dealing with the world breaker. He would not be able to contact the outside world for a while. It was useless to worry for nothing. He just needed to know that he was still alive. In addition, he made a simple call to Xan Qin. The workload of the Guangdong headquarters had been exploding in the past 2 days. The 2 little Lolas were busy. With the destruction of the Special Affairs Bureau, the new department, which was originally hidden in the dark, quickly came to the forefront. The headquarters was temporarily located in Wujing. They established a new office location for the headquarters, accepted the original Special Affairs Bureau employees from all over the country, and conducted further probing and negotiations with the major forces of the underworld who had secretly sent people over. With Qin Guang gone, the 2 little Lolas had to take care of all these matters. Sweetheart, why is it that in other people's cartoons little Lolas like us can be so popular just by acting cute all day long, but when it comes to us we're always tired like dead dogs? Wu Miaowan threw the documents in her hands away like a goddess scattering flowers. She looked up with a dull gaze, but her hands reached out like lightning. In just a moment she had categorized the staff information of the various branches of the Special Affairs Bureau. Xan Qin sat in front of the computer. Stop complaining. We're both lucky. Didn't you see the 30-odd people that Qin Guang brought into his company? We have to do our work here and we have to stand guard in his company, cooking and cleaning. They're the ones who are miserable. That's right. Director, if you don't come back soon, I'll have to go to Beijing to arrest him. He's using the excuse of participating in the military exercise and never coming back. He's trying to shirk his responsibility. Xan Qin swung her hand and was so angry that she wanted to smash the mouse. Wu Miaowan comforted her. You can't think that way. After all, his current task is to stabilize the Wen family. Don't mention Wen. Xan Qin was really angry. Wu Miaowan turned to look at her childhood friend and laughed. You're jealous. You like our director. Like hell I like him. Xan Qin would never admit to such a thing. Do we really need to treat them to a meal? Qin Guang asked Lu Xiaoyang, who was sitting next to him, sitting in the private room of Yan Yushan restaurant. He was not very happy about this kind of social interaction. Buttface, you can just accompany the guests. Why do you have to drag me here? However, this time they had suddenly jumped the queue to appear on the program. Today they had settled the deal and tomorrow they would have to record the program. Moreover, they had to be the first one to jump the queue, which could be considered as owing a favor to the relevant leaders of the central television. However, the other party had specifically mentioned that they wanted to have a meal with him. Anyway, Qin Guang had nothing to do today, so he came here to sit. However, they had agreed to meet at 6:30, and now it was almost 7 o'clock, but no one had come. This made Qin Guang very unhappy, and it reminded him of a familiar feeling. Yes, that's right, it was the unpleasant experience of treating President Ma of the 5 capital cities with Zhu Jifa. He didn't even want to complain about himself. Was the old man going to fall into the vicious cycle of being pretentious and slapping himself while eating? He took out his phone silently. If that's the case, who can I summon to be my pretentious baby? Xiao Linzi? Save it. Only a few people really knew Xiao Linzi's identity. If the other party could recognize Xiao Linzi, he must be a tough guy. Brother Xiao Bai? He should be able to take on a fight and he would definitely be able to hold the fort, but I have a mental barrier. As for the others, I really can't find any reliable choices. Thinking about it carefully, it was because I don't have enough face. If I really had the same status as Brother Xiao Bai, who would dare to ask me to entertain people? Alright, if I used my identity as the chief of the Stabilizing General Bureau, I would definitely be able to intimidate people, but I can't say this. I have a luxurious robe, but I can only walk at night. So, who would have thought that I, the almighty Superman, the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail, the chief of the Stabilizing General Bureau, would actually be reduced to the level of accompanying a third-rate celebrity? It really makes one sigh. For the sake of faith, for the sake of fame, in the end I still have to sell my dignity. The group of people sat and waited for more than 10 minutes. Fang Tianyu was so hungry that his stomach was growling, while Suli took out some French bread from his satchel and started to fill his stomach. The few people from the Central TV Guinness program team finally arrived. The situation was not as serious as the previous time when Qin Guang and Zhu Jifa invited President Ma. After the group of people entered the door, they apologized profusely, saying that there were many things to do in the office, and to adjust the program arrangements at the last minute, they were extremely busy, and they were embarrassed to be late. Since the other party gave face, Qin Guang didn't put on an act and gave them enough face. It seemed like they were really busy with the change of the program. At the table, everyone chatted happily, looking very harmonious. Until the second group of people appeared, the atmosphere was very harmonious. This second group of people was the official staff of the Guinness organization. There were 2 tall men with blonde hair and blue eyes, and a rich lady with branded clothes on her body. The Guinness organization wasn't a traditional official organization, but a non-governmental organization that was spread all over the world. Its founding mission was to encourage people to challenge and surpass their limits. On the surface, it was a non-profit organization, but in fact, Guinness had made a lot of money from this name. In a sense, if someone was certified by Guinness in a certain aspect, at least in the eyes of the public, this person had basically reached the ranks of the world's best in this field. With Guinness's efforts to promote this concept in China, and with the help of some government agencies, the Guinness certification had become more well-known and recognized than overseas. Just like this time, Yu Hong and the rest had helped Chen Guang get approved by Guinness. Other than bribing some people in Central TV, these two Guinness staff had also received a lot of money. Of course, Chen Guang did not ask them about this matter. He had given them some funds and allowed them to do whatever they wanted. He was not a rigid person. In the past, Feng Yu was poor and had to work his fingers to survive. Now, it was easy to earn money, and anything that could be solved with money was not a big deal. All Chen Guang wanted was a big stage. As long as he stood on the stage, it was up to him whether he could pass the certification. There was no need for him to do anything behind the scenes. As long as one was not blind, they could tell that Chen Guang's pencil sharpening skills were unparalleled. Out of etiquette, Chen Guang used a standard British accent to communicate with the three foreigners. He did not even need Feng Tianyu to translate for him. Old Feng felt that he was a useless person. Chief Chen's accent is unparalleled. Lu Xiaoyang comforted him. Don't worry, brother Feng. With you around, we feel like we are a team. Feng Tianyu was overjoyed. Really? Am I that important? Lu Xiaoyang nodded. Of course. A company without a marketing department is not a complete company. Although the marketing department does not seem to be of much use now. On the other side, Chen Guang was chatting with Lu Xiaoyang when he felt something was amiss. Since when did that rich woman sit beside him? What is she doing with her hand? Why is her hand on my thigh? Why are her eyes so watery when she looks at me? If it was a pretty girl looking at me like that, it would make me feel good. But auntie, what are you doing? Stop messing around. I don't like your type. He did not expect to encounter such a situation. It was not easy to be a female celebrity in the entertainment industry, but it was not easy to be a male celebrity either. The rumors were true. There was actually a rich woman who liked this type. Stop messing around. You look older than my mother. Chapter 678. Mr. Chin, Mariana is the president of the Guinness Asia Pacific Council. It's a pleasure to meet you. The more she spoke, the closer she sat to Chen Guang. Her plump body pressed closer to Chen Guang. In addition, Mariana's jewelry store needs a spokesperson. Mr. Chin, your image is very compatible with my business philosophy. Can I invite you for supper tonight? As she spoke, she reached out to Chen Guang's arm and exerted a little force. Feeling Master Guang's firm muscles hidden behind the clothes rack, she silently swallowed her saliva. Her eyes shone even brighter. The two Guinness staff members next to her looked at the situation helplessly. Mariana was the widow of a jewelry tycoon in America. She was unrestrained, rich, and capricious. She had always been known as a male model hunter in the European and American social circles. In the past, she was just a nominal member of Guinness and never interfered with the specific affairs. These 2 days she happened to be traveling with her company's staff. When she heard that a Chinese celebrity was inviting her to dinner, she happily tagged along. Sure enough, she took a fancy to this Chinese guy. This performance was a little immodest, but it was in line with her usual style of doing things. She liked this kind of young and fresh body that was full of vitality. There was no difference between the East and the West. As long as the other party was famous enough, handsome enough, and sturdy enough, they were all within her hunting range. Chen Guang's stomach churned. He wanted to spit on this woman's face. Although the old man wasn't a good person, his aesthetic standards were too different from mine. I'm only selling my skills, not my body. I just want your Guinness to certify me. You're asking too much. Thank you for your kindness, Mrs. Smith, but I'm afraid I can't endorse your jewelry. I've already endorsed a jewelry company in China. Chen Guang remembered the last time he had dinner with Bai Hua. There was indeed a jewelry company among the endorsement contracts he had signed. He could use it as a shield. That's a pity, but it's okay. Mr. Chin, we can still talk about other things. The plump woman still didn't give up. She attacked Chen Guang again, her words becoming more and more obvious. Although the other people at the table seemed to be talking about their own things, they were also shocked by the scene on Chen Guang's side. The leaders of Central TV were filled with regret. It was actually Mariana Smith's request to invite Chen Guang to accompany the guests. At that time, they did not think too much about it and just invited Chen Guang along, thinking that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, they knew about the relationship between Chen Guang and Jin Shiyue, so they did not dare to offend Chen Guang. They did not expect the chairman of the Guinness Asia Pacific region to have such an idea. Chen Guang felt like he was about to explode. If it was his old temper, he would have punched her in the face. If you were a hot blonde beauty with big wavy hair and blue eyes, it's not that we can't have a good conversation, but I really can't take your bite. He silently raised his hand and blocked the noblewoman's hands. Then he stood up with a cold expression and apologized. Everyone, I'm sorry. I have something urgent to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Mr. Qin? What do you mean by this? The noblewoman's face also turned cold, and she called out to Chen Guang from behind. Chen Guang turned around. When the others saw his expression, they knew that something bad was going to happen. They wanted to persuade him, but it was too late. Mrs. Smith, I don't know how you deal with people abroad, but this is China. Although I can speak a foreign language fluently, it doesn't mean that I understand your country's culture. Perhaps in your opinion this is a little rude, but in my opinion I have already used a subtle and clear way to express my disgust for your overly intimate actions, but you turned a blind eye to it, or are you playing dumb with me? I originally wanted to give everyone a way out. Using our ancient Chinese saying, it is to leave a way out for others. But if you insist on asking me what I mean, then I will tell you clearly that I don't care who you are, nor do I care what jewelry company you have. I'm already very rich, understand? After saying this long string of words, Qin Guang pushed the door open and prepared to leave. Mrs. Smith suddenly stood up. You have to know that I have a veto on the Guinness certification. Qin Guang almost laughed out loud, but he shrugged. Whether I have your certification or not is not as important to me as you think. The audience in front of the TV has their own judgment, and it won't matter if you give me a stamp or not. Also, I also want to know how you are going to give me a veto. Why don't we meet at the recording tomorrow? You can use whatever tricks you have. I don't mind. This time, Qin Guang really left, leaving everyone at the table looking at each other. The leaders of Central TV's program team did not expect this meal to end on such a sour note. They were actually in a difficult position, stuck in the middle. They did not want to offend Qin Guang, but the Guinness organization had been working with them for many years, and they knew each other very well. It was a happy cooperation to get rich together, so it was not good for them to be biased. Mrs. Smith threw a cold look at Qin Guang and left with a gloomy face, leaving the other two Guinness employees to clean up the mess. Mr. Yu, this time you're boss. One of the Guinness employees said hesitantly. Although Yu Hong felt that Qin Guang's reaction was a little too extreme, he was the boss. Since the boss had made the decision, the employees had to clean up the mess, but they could not go against the boss's wishes. They had to do things according to the boss's tone. Yu Hong smiled bitterly and said, Mrs. Smith's previous behavior did cross the line a little, so I hope Mr. Powell can help mediate. There are some differences in our culture, but it doesn't matter. As the old Chinese saying goes, no discord, no concord. We should seek common ground while reserving our differences. Powell continued to shake his head. Mr. Yu, you don't understand. Mrs. Smith also has a lot of say in the entire association. Besides, she brought her employees to China for a vacation. Her employees? Fang Qianyu, who was next to him, became interested. The masters of Smith Jewelry? Powell nodded. Yes. In fact, we have held competitions similar to Mr. Chen's performance in Europe and America before. At that time, the champions or the top few were all hired by Mrs. Smith. In a sense, Smith Jewelry may not be the largest and most high-end jewelry company in the world, but their top technicians are indeed a group of people with the most dexterous hands in the world. We may not be able to stop Mrs. Smith from activating the challenge mode tomorrow. The so-called challenge mode was rarely used in the entire Guinness certification system. Usually, the certification was only compared to the past records. After all, it was very difficult to gather all the people around the world who were particularly good in a certain field to participate in a small certification. Or, some people chose to challenge very unconventional events, such as blowing up 100 balloons in a minute. As long as they completed that, they would basically meet the certification standards. To activate the challenge mode, it usually took a long time to prepare, build momentum in advance, arrange the contestants, and go through a series of complicated preparations to gather the world record holder and the challenger together. Or, it was to gather other contestants who had already achieved enough in the field to challenge the new record together. The contestants could not be the kind that could be found on the street. At the very least, they had to have achieved enough certification and reputation in the field. For example, several of the top employees of Smith Jewelry Company were highly respected craftsmen in Europe and the United States. Each of them had more or less a different world record. Everyone was suddenly speechless. They could not help but worry about Qin Guang's fate the next day. If Mrs. Smith really did that, things would be really troublesome. Qin Guang's previous videos could indeed prove that he was very good in a sense, but who could guarantee that he would be able to win in the end under the attack of Smith Jewelry Company's employees? After all, they were people who had really proven themselves in the world competition, and more than one of them. Apart from that, the authenticity of Qin Guang's videos had yet to be verified. After all, no one present had actually seen him perform in person. In their original plan, Qin Guang's matter was at most a commercial hype. As for Qin Guang's real ability, they really did not have much hope. After all, what Qin Guang wanted to challenge was to sharpen the most Eiffel Tower pencil nibs in the shortest amount of time. There were no competitors. It was enough for him to show a level that was difficult for ordinary people to reach. He did not really have to surpass them. When he performed, he would add some sound effects, some rendering, some special effects, and then, with a bang, he would make it seem like something that was not very impressive. After all, who would have nothing better to do with pencils? No one really expected a new generation of celebrities like Qin Guang to put much effort into sharpening pencils. He would not be so bored, right? It was supposed to be a very simple and happy matter, but now that he had offended Mrs. Smith, things had become troublesome. Yu Hong's employees had personally helped Qin Guang write the bleach essay during the battle of wits and courage between Qin Guang and 8 Weekly. They had also seen some technical analysis, so they had more confidence in Qin Guang than the average person. But they still felt that things were quite troublesome. Mr. Qin was busy all day. He was good at this in the past, but now that he had not played for a long time, his skills had returned. What if he did not perform well tomorrow? Or Mrs. Smith's employees performed better than usual? There were more uncertain factors. What if they really sniped Mr. Qin? Thinking of how overbearing Qin Guang was when he left, Yu Hong and the others had a headache. You can show off for a while, but us employees have a headache when we have to clean up after you. The matter was not completed, and the initial investment was wasted. Mr. Powell, is there really nothing we can do about Mrs. Smith? Fang Tianyu wanted to light his cigarette again. He was very depressed. Powell shook his head. Although we don't want to admit it, Mrs. Smith is famous for her eccentric personality in the industry. Of course, she is also a billion-dollar tycoon, so she has the right to be willful. Unless you can convince Mr. Qin to lower his head and communicate with Mrs. Smith. Oh no. No. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Not to mention Yu Hong and Fang Tianyu's employees, even the leaders of the Central TV program team were shaking their heads like a rattled drum. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. First of all, Qin Guang could not possibly have any interest in Marianne Smith. Second, introducing Jean Shirua's boyfriend to a foreign lady was something that these so-called leaders of Central TV felt their scalps go numb just thinking about it. We can't take the blame for this. If we had known that your chairman was planning this, we would not have brought this meal today. Then there's nothing we can do about Mrs. Smith. She is the chairman. Everyone get ready to accept the challenge tomorrow. I hope Mr. Qin can win with as much vigor as he did just now. If there is any dispute, I think Mrs. Smith will find a chance to use her veto power as the chairman. Powell looked like a gentleman, but in fact they had lost face today. In the end, he could not hide his displeasure and left after saying a few words. After Powell left, the Central TV program team explained to Yu Hong and the rest. We didn't expect this either. Who knows? The old widow has been dry for a long time, so her taste is weird. Although our CEO Qin is not very tall, he is a little handsome. Men who are too handsome are also a disaster. Lu Xiaoyang commented. Qin Guang returned to the hotel alone. He did not care much about the incident just now. He had forgotten about it after the disgust. In the past he had always been proud that he was not ugly, but now it seemed that being handsome was also a sin. God had punished him for his sin. I admit to this sin. What do you think that fat woman is going to do? She even brought a master to snipe me? In the hotel, Qin Guang chatted with the four of them without looking back. At the same time, he casually achieved a pentakill on the computer. He had not done it for a long time, so he had to take care of Xiao Tsong's mood. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room wasn't as high as when he hosted the Throne Challenge, but it was still maintained at more than 2 million viewers. For an extremely unprofessional online live streamer who didn't care about his work, having more than 2 million viewers was already considered a phenomenal number. When Qin Guang was talking, he did not turn off the microphone. He did not deliberately avoid anyone. Lu Xiaoyang sighed. It's like this. We offended someone. An excellent employee would never say that the boss was in the wrong, even if he knew that the boss had made a mistake. He would take the blame first. The word "we" had a very rich connotation. Fang Tianyu sorted out a document from behind him and put it in Qin Guang's hand. He said, "CEO Qin, this is the information on several top masters of Smith jewelry. They are really good and they have been immersed in handicrafts for many years. They are internationally renowned. Although it happened in a hurry, they did come prepared." Qin Guang did not even look at the information. Instead, he silently finished the last team battle, destroyed the opponents, and led his teammates to take down the opponent's base. Only then did he look back at the crowd, and then he switched to the bullet screen. The viewers in the bullet screen were obviously very interested in the story. It sounded like there was an inside story, very exciting and very explosive. Chapter 679. Who's so arrogant as to snipe Brother Almighty? Smith Jewelry? What's that for? I heard from my cousin who's studying abroad that it's a very famous old jewelry company. It's very large and famous for its handmade jewelry. Really? Why would they want to make things difficult for Brother Almighty? Snipe what? Don't you know? Haven't you seen Brother Almighty's Weibo? He's going to the Guinness conference tomorrow. Compete in what? Dota? Who dares to compete with him? No, it's sharpening pencils. F***ck. This is so F***king boring. Sharpening pencils? It's probably a variant of handicraft? Is boring just thinking about it? It's boring. I don't think so. I've watched Guinness before. It's quite exciting. And someone actually dares to snipe Brother Almighty. Don't you think it's interesting? It makes sense. That's why I don't watch Guinness. I'll support it this time? I agree with you. Don't blindly worship Brother Almighty. I just checked the information. The people from Smith Jewelry are very powerful, super powerful. Really? I'll check it out too. F***ck, they're really powerful. F***ck. Brother Almighty is in danger this time. Is it really that scary? Really? There are several world champions in the handicraft world. It's dangerous. Is Brother Almighty going to kneel this time? Kneel your sister. Brother Almighty will kneel? Have you forgotten the painful lessons of those people before? Have you forgotten everyone who thought he would kneel? Those who wanted to live stream themselves eating 10 kilograms of sh*t, streaking naked, whatever they did, didn't they all kneel in the end? There's still some truth to it. Alright, let's wait for the show. Brother Almighty is invincible. Overlord of spring and autumn. Unify the world. Invincible in the universe. Dominate the outland. For the Lich King. Gradually, the comments started to harmonize with one side supporting Qin Guang. After all, most of those watching the stream were Qin Guang's fans. As for the haters and haters? Under the dual attacks of the extremely diligent moderators and super administrators, these people all lived on a long list of banned people. They would kill anyone they saw, and their IPs would be permanently blocked without batting an eye. Qin Guang's livestream was also known as the Tomb of the Rhythm Dog. No other livestream had ever been as diligent as the Rhythm Dog. Even the Rhythm team, who were paid by him, did not accept his work. Damn, he was too diligent. The cost of registering a new account was too high. After all, his real audience was already enough to keep the bullet screen exploding for a long time. He really did not need a Rhythm Dog to increase his popularity. Now, he simply set the bullet screen to only LV5 and above audience members, but it was still useless. The bullet screen was still filled with snowflakes. There was even a legend circulating on Bamboo platform. Those who were qualified to post colorful bullet screens in the live broadcast room of Almighty Superman were the real tycoons. They were diehard fans who had given gifts of more than 5,000 yuan. After the bullet comments were in sync, Qin Guang pointed at the screen and turned to look at the four of them. Did you see that? I have so many fans supporting me. They trust me so much. How can I lose? I can't afford to lose, even for the more than 2 million fans in the livestream room. So, no matter what that fat bitch is going to do or what kind of challenge mode it is, it doesn't matter. I don't care because I must win. And I must win. Although they knew he was talking nonsense, and the blessing of fans' spiritual strength only existed in hot-blooded comics, the fans in the livestream room were still very happy. They started to send gifts crazily again. It was even more ferocious than when he used the Rampage Pentakill. Yu Hong and the other three had no choice. The boss was acting tough. What could the employees do? They had to bow down and worship him. Yes, that's right. President Qin has never lost. It's the same this time. I don't care what kind of fighters the fat bitch has called. Buttface reacted the fastest. As a pioneer paparazzi who had been with Zhuo Wei for so many years, he was really good at flattering people. Fang Qianyu said weakly, but the masters of Smith are really... Before he could finish his words, Lu Xiaoyang poked his waist fiercely. He immediately changed his words. President Qin is invincible. Yu Hong and Su Li couldn't stand this group of people anymore. They ran out of the livestream room and disappeared from the livestream room as soon as possible. After comforting his employees, Qin Guang asked them to leave. Then he sat back in front of the computer and started another round of one-on-one games. He snapped his fingers calmly at the camera. Brothers and sisters, did you hear that? Tomorrow I will participate in the recording of the so-called Guinness show. It will be broadcasted in a few days. I want to give you a warning in advance. Well, I hope you can support me in front of the TV and help me promote the show. I don't know much about Smith's jewelry and I don't want to know much about them. I don't know how powerful their people are. But I can promise you that no matter who they send, I will win without any shame, okay? I heard that the audience rating of the Guinness show is less than 1%. Let's make a plan. If you can help me promote the show, the audience rating can reach 3%. That will be about 9 million people. I will draw 1,000 yuan cash prizes on Weibo. How about that? To Chen Guang, money wasn't as important as faith points. In order to promote the Guinness conference, he had spared no effort. The more people watch the show, even those who are not interested in sharpening pencils, as long as they are convinced by his godly skills, they will be able to provide faith points. If 1 million yuan can help him reach the peak of sharpening pencils, it will be worth it. Although the internet celebrity economy is booming, and the net worth of internet celebrities is rising, Chen Guang is the only one who dares to take out 1 million yuan for a lucky draw. He is rich, willful, and unreasonable. For the sake of fame, the old man is willing to go all out. To be honest, although his live broadcast time was not fixed, every time he broadcast he would bring the audience a great visual enjoyment. Even if it was just a solo ladder, he could still play it to his heart's content. Today was originally just an ordinary live broadcast, but he made such a pretentious trailer, which really made the audience's hearts surge with emotions. I don't know why, but we just like your arrogant and condescending attitude, yet others can't do anything about it. Just because of your face, we can't help but want to give you a gift. Halfway through the game, the promotion for women came up again. Chen Guang is going to play the role of a retired boxer who runs a handicraft shop. In the movie, he will not use a stunt double. He will do it himself, trying to make the movie as realistic as possible. Putting aside his acting skills, Chen Guang is so focused. He trained hard for the movie, and now he is going to challenge the Guinness World Record. It is hard to find a male lead like him. Originally, the movie Women has attracted enough attention these days. Once the promotion for the movie keeps up, the audience in the live broadcast room jumped up again out of thin air. The effect is even better when both sides work together. Xiao Tsong is very proud in his heart. Other live broadcast platforms have to work hard, poach people everywhere, create all kinds of gimmicks, and even take the risk of letting the female hosts in the platform sell their bodies just to attract more popularity. However, the effect is like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. They can't make ends meet all year round, and they are all losing money doing the platform. But My Bamboo live broadcast, since it is on the list with Chen Guang, the big tree in the industry, it is going to become the best in the industry. Yes, that's right. In many people's eyes, I, Chang Xiaotsong, am a loafer. My private life is also very messy. Without my dad, I am nothing. Before I created the Bamboo platform, I relied on my dad and his think tank to guide me in my investments. That's how I barely made any progress. Even my graduation certificate from an Ivy League school abroad was obtained by luck. I am not particularly talented in business and I am not a good person. But the best decision I made in the first half of my life is to be the first to go to the 5 capitals after smelling the smell of blood on Chen Guang's body. Through Zhongbai, I got in touch with Chen Guang. Thinking about it, he silently clicked the mouse and bought 1,000 Manchu Han Imperial Feast for Chen Guang from his own pocket. 1 Manchu Han Imperial Feast is worth 500 yuan. When Chen Guang got off the broadcast, he looked at the statistics of the gifts backstage. Well, it is really a coincidence. The other side casually promised to draw 1 million yuan. In the end, I only broadcast for less than 3 hours and the gifts added up to 1.01 million yuan. I have broken even in advance. Why are there so many rich people today? When he returned to the broadcast room, he looked at the number 1 fan ranking for today. Well, it was actually Xiao Tsong. Chen Guang silently sent a message to Xiao Tsong and then went offline to pack up. As for the so-called team behind Mrs. Smith, he really did not care. He did not understand where Mrs. Smith got the courage to play this challenge mode. Poor mortal, you and your subordinates do not understand the realm of gods, okay? Do you think I am just an internet celebrity who relies on hype? Do you think I do not have real skills? The ignorant are really fearless. They must not have watched my videos properly. They have no idea what kind of existence they are challenging. Chen Guang did not guess wrong. Although his early videos had more or less a little influence abroad, the master-level employees of the jewelry company were not netizens. Most of their time was spent working and earning money, so they did not pay much attention to the hot topics on the internet. It was understandable that they did not know the power of an almighty Superman. As for Mariana Smith, Although she also paid attention to celebrities and male models, most of her attention was on finding her own male idol. She really did not think that all the employees in her company would lose to a Chinese male artist. Mariana lay on the magnificent golden bed, letting the two male models who had been hired with a lot of money go up and down around her plump body. Her eyes were fixed on her cell phone until the live broadcast screen went black. Then she turned off the live broadcast with a gloomy face and patted the square-faced male model beside her. "What did he say about me just now?" "Dear Mary, he just said that he is not afraid of the challenge of your company's employees." The male model did not dare to translate Qin Guang's fat woman. Unexpectedly, although Mrs. Smith did not understand Chinese, she had a deep impression of the pronunciation of the words fat woman. Subconsciously, she felt that it was not something good. "What is Sfibo?" He said it many times. This is probably his mantra. "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me what he means." Mrs. Smith's face turned cold. The male model saw that he could not hide it anymore, so he said carefully, "Dear Mrs. Smith, this is an insulting word. He is saying that your body is too fat." Mrs. Smith was angry. "How am I fat? I'm so slim. I can only be called plump." Because of her anger, the fat all over her body was shaking like waves. The two male models suppressed the discomfort in their hearts. "Yes, ma'am, you are indeed plump. I have never been humiliated like this. My employees will get justice for me." Mariana took out her cell phone again. "I have decided to invite my friend here." A few minutes later, she hung up the phone in satisfaction. At the same time, a middle-aged man sat up from the bed with a bitter smile. He was about to pack his luggage and fly to Yenjing from Tokyo. "Hiroto, where are you going?" The middle-aged man named Hiroto Aoyama sighed. "Mrs. Smith just called and said that she needs my help. I have to take a plane to Yenjing in half an hour." "That disgusting fat woman? Don't talk about the boss of Smith's Jewelry like that. If it were not for her, I would still be a beggar performing acrobatics on the street." "Hiroto, don't look at yourself like that. You have the most flexible hands in the world." Hiroto Aoyama looked at his slightly deformed and slender fingers, and the bitter smile on his face became thicker. How could he have the heart to tell his beloved wife what kind of training he had received in Ninja Valley in order to obtain these hands? He had once been known as the #1 genius in Ninja Canyon, but in the end he had been reduced to performing on the street. It was because of this unbearable experience that he cherished everything he had now, including the world-famous title of Ghost Hand. As his wife had said, Hiroto Aoyama's hands were recognized as the world's most skillful hands. His artistic level might not be as good as the masters of Smith's Jewelry, but when it came to the level of dexterity, he would never lose to anyone. "Damn you, Qin Guang. Just you wait until you're begging me before getting trampled by me." Mariana's face flushed red as she cursed. She opened her mouth to scream, but in the end she couldn't. She kicked the male model who was squatting in front of her off the floor. "You piece of sh*t. I didn't feel anything at all." The two male models almost burst into tears. "Your flesh is wrinkled. We can't beat you even if we do everything we can." "What? Hiroto Aoyama is also participating in the Guinness conference this afternoon?" Early in the morning, Lu Xiaoyang had just opened his sleepy eyes when he was shocked by this explosive news. He was so sleepy that he woke up. "What are you doing? Can't you be quieter? Can't you let me have a good night's sleep?" Fang Tianyu's voice came from the side. Lu Xiaoyang was stunned for a few seconds. Then he screamed in pain, "Ah! Why are you in my bed?" Chapter 680. Fang Tianyu was so scared that he rolled off the bed. He propped himself up and said, "What are you screaming for? Didn't President Chen occupy your room last night? Did you come to my room to sleep?" "Oh, I see. But why didn't you wear underwear?" LV Xiaoyang shouted again. Fang Tianyu shrugged. "You didn't wear underwear either." They stayed there for a few seconds. Holy *T. F***CKU. It took them 10 minutes to recover from the horrible illusion. They clenched their buttocks subconsciously when they walked to make sure they were not fatally injured. However, it was useless. They were always suspicious. After all, no one could remember what they would do when they fell asleep. "Later, check if there's any peppermint smell on your penis," Fang Tianyu said. LV Xiaoyang was confused. "What? I used Ma Yinglong last night. If something happened, it would smell," Fang Tianyu said confidently. "Thank God. Thank you." After a while, Yu Hong was also shocked by the news that Hiroto Aoyama was going to participate in the Guinness World Cup. Unlike Smith's employees, Ghost Hand Hikaru Aoyama was someone who truly stood at the top of the industry. In the past few years he had appeared as a guest performer in various places around the world. The skills he displayed were not magic, but they were better than magic. His hands were fast, accurate, and ruthless. He could even carve a grain of rice into a miniature sculpture of a person in a few seconds. President Chen, what should we do now? We are in big trouble. LV Xiaoyang wanted to slap the table. Chen Guang was still very calm, which made him very anxious. Chen Guang drank a few mouthfuls of porridge and put down the bowl slowly. Do you know what I like most about you, Buttface? What? I like how surprised you are, because the more you can't keep your composure, the more unfathomable I seem. Holy *T. Yu Hong, who was watching from the side, also felt that all his years of cultivation had gone to waste. In the face of CEO Chen like this, he really could not maintain a calm state of mind. Alright, I'll go alone for today's recording. Remember your tasks. I hope that you guys can complete the piano performance today. Don't doubt my ability. Just do what I tell you to do as fast as you can, and that'll be fine. I really don't have the patience to instill any more ideas in you. You just need to believe in one thing. I never speak nonsense, and I never fight a battle I'm not confident of winning. Furthermore, I will never lose. As for the rest of you, you just need to follow the guidelines I set in the beginning and do your best to complete the task I gave you. You just need to build a stage for me to display my skills. Frankly speaking, I'm not very satisfied with all of your performances so far. With that, Chen Guang got up and left. He almost never spoke harshly to these company leaders, but this time he was really a little impatient. It doesn't matter if others doubt me, but since you guys want to be my employees, then you have to blindly worship me. Every time you waste questioning me, you're dragging me down. Guys, I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. If you want to keep up with my pace, you have to abandon basic common sense and have crazy superstitions about me. Of course, these things might seem too ridiculous in the eyes of ordinary people, but it didn't matter. Chen Guang was confident that he could take them on a flight twice, and they would naturally understand the reason behind it. He would use this Guinness conference and women as an opportunity to settle these two things. Needless to say, they would start to doubt their lives. CEO Chen is angry. Looking at Chen Guang's back, Lu Xiaoyang sighed. Fang Qianyu lit a cigarette and began to feel melancholy. Su Li, on the other hand, took out a mirror calmly. He felt that one of his eyebrows was crooked. Yu Hong was silent. Chen Guang's way of doing things was too different from Tang Xiaokai's. They were both young men, but Tang Xiaokai was strict and meticulous in his work. He relied on his amazing talent to do whatever he wanted on Wall Street, and he was the trendsetter of the financial era. Chen Guang, on the other hand, did not play by the rules. To put it nicely, it was unconstrained. To put it bluntly, he did things as he pleased. He did not have a plan, and it could even be said that he was reckless. From the beginning, Yu Hong did not approve of Chen Guang's policy of not caring about the business plan first, and instead he only wanted to promote himself. This was too much of a conflict with his outlook as a manager of Tangjie Foundation. However, he did not object to it. Although he was sent by Tang Xiaokai to work for Chen Guang, he understood the logic of the workplace. One man cannot be a second master. Regardless of whether Chen Guang's decision was right or wrong, he had made a decision, and he was responsible for executing it. Even if Chen Guang brokerage was screwed up in the end, he could just return to Tangjie Foundation. Anyway, didn't Boss Tang say that he was not afraid of losing money? Compared to others, Yu Hong, who was in his 40s, was no longer young. He could not fit in with the relatively young Fang Qianyu and Lu Xiaoyang style, but it did not matter. A company needed someone who could maintain his composure, and Yu Hong, who was in charge of the administrative department, felt that he was suitable to play such a role. However, when Chen Guang arrived in Beijing, he obtained 150 million yuan in endorsement fees at lightning speed. He did not do anything, and the other party transferred all the money to him. Yu Hong was especially confused. Boss Chen, didn't you say that you would not make money first, and that you would rather lose money to promote your general policy? Alright, when he finally accepted Chen Guang's unimaginable ability to make money, and after going through a lot of trouble with Tang Xiaokai and Su Li, they changed the shares of Chen Guang brokerage and transferred 150 million yuan into their account. However, Chen Guang threw 120 million yuan into a movie that was destined to fail. These few days, Yu Hong felt that life was full of ups and downs, and if he did not have heart disease, he would have been in the hospital. I have already contacted the National Gallery of Art about the piano performance. They have a free day next week, which is on August 30th. If there is no problem, let's do it on that day, Fang Qianyu said. Lu Xiaoyang nodded. Then it's settled. Old Fong and old Yu, go and contact the venue's ticketing service. I will get someone to post a speech online to warm up the audience. Boss Chen is right, we have to speed up the pace. Yu Hong sighed in his heart. It's good to be young. You guys are so careless. The Guinness conference was not a live show. After all, this show was full of accidents, and if it was a live show there would be all kinds of uncontrollable accidents. If it was a recorded broadcast, it could avoid accidents, and at the same time the effect of the show could be controlled through post-editing. After lunch, Qin Guang rushed to the central TV building. Other than his blind confidence, he was very concerned about the recording of today's show. He had spent a lot of effort to get this done, so he had to do it properly and beautifully. Today's Guinness conference was also very important. It was related to whether he could increase the sharpening world's faith value from less than 2,000 a day to more than 40,000 in one go. After all, he was still nearly 30 custom-made training sessions away from perfecting his body, and the gap in faith value was infinitely large. As for Mrs. Smith's harassment and revenge, he really did not care. He crossed his legs and waited downstairs. He took out his phone and browsed the news on the internet. From time to time he would look at Weibo. The storm caused by women did not fade with the passage of time. Instead, it became an old pot of wine, getting stronger and stronger. Now, not only did Qin Guang have to act, but he had also become an investor. In the eyes of some people, this news naturally meant that he had more control over the film than a normal rookie actor should have. It was a typical case of people who paid out of their own pocket to make a film to support themselves. Even Deng Xiaojiang, who had a good reputation, was dragged down and became a villain. This made Deng Xiaojiang very angry, but he could not refute it. Things had unknowingly become like this, and it was indeed a little out of Big Beard's control. He had no choice but to cover his head. He did not care about the outside world, he only wanted to focus on preparing for the film. The male lead had already given up, so he would make up for his shortcomings from another angle. If he really messed up, he could just work hard on post-editing to save as much as possible. Qin Guang had been watching these news for a long time and had been scolded so many times that he was becoming more and more numb. Anyway, no one believed what he said now. Getting angry with those online trolls over the internet would ruin his mood for no reason. If he could, Qin Guang would even want to start shooting the film today and release it tomorrow. However, this matter still had to be done according to Big Beard Deng's timetable. Preparing for a movie was not a gathering to have a meal and play cards. With just a phone call, everyone would gather and start working. Everything had to be coordinated by Big Beard. Quietly closing Weibo, Qin Guang closed his eyes for a moment and said in his heart, "No matter how turbulent the outside world is, I will not move. When the spring flowers bloom, I will go out for a walk with a donkey or a horse. People will naturally understand." Forget it. If you call the person who is scolding you to come to you now, I bet 10 kingdoms that you can strangle him alive. Liuli's voice came from the heavenly Holy Grail. How do you know? Qin Guang asked curiously. Liuli said angrily, "If it weren't for the Holy Grail's sturdiness, you could have crushed the cup with the cover." "Yo, Mr. Qin, so early. Let's go up together?" Qin Guang was about to argue with Liuli when the leader of the central TV program team, whom he had met at the dinner table yesterday, suddenly appeared in front of him and greeted him warmly. "Sure." Qin Guang put the cup back in his bag and walked up with the man. "By the way, Mr. Qin, it's that Mrs. Smith from yesterday?" the man asked tentatively while carefully looking at Qin Guang's face. "What's wrong? Challenge mode? It doesn't matter. Let her be." Qin Guang said casually. "It's not that simple. Maybe Mr. Qin is not very clear about Smith Jewelry's reputation in the industry. If it's really a challenge mode and you lose, I'm afraid we can only cut this part to avoid some adverse effects on you." At this point, the central TV program team had made up their mind. Since they were stuck in the middle, they didn't want to offend either side. The safest way was to directly cut the program and pretend that nothing had happened. Qin Guang became anxious when he heard this. If they really cut it, not only would his initial investment be wasted, where else could he find such a suitable platform to promote his boring pencil sharpening skills? Other than the Guinness conference, where else could he find so many bored audiences to watch him sharpen pencils? No. We definitely can't cut it. There's no need to cut it. Just rest assured. I won't lose. I really won't lose. Waving his hand, Qin Guang spoke without any hesitation. The central TV leader was helpless. "Why can't you tell good from bad? I really want to dig out your heart and see how it grows. Where do you get this confidence from?" Lin Fan thought. But about an hour ago, the Guinness Association reported another contestant. Qin Guang interrupted him. "You're talking about Hiroto Aoyama, right? I heard this name early this morning. It's not a problem. It's really not a problem. Hey Mr. Chen, that's the ghost hand. It's a top expert who can carve a grain of rice into a human figure in a few seconds. You haven't seen it? Chen Guang felt that if he didn't do something, this guy would probably persuade him to withdraw from the competition. He sighed. Why do people in this world always think that the limits of human beings are so simple? The two of them walked out of the elevator. The program recording hall was on this floor. In front of them was the reception desk of the Department 13 Arts channel where the program team was located. Chen Guang didn't talk to this guy anymore. He went to the front desk and patted the table with a smile. He smiled at the receptionist and said, "Hello, can I borrow a pencil and sharpener?" "Mr. Chen, what are you doing?" The Central TV leader was standing beside him, completely confused. Chen Guang shrugged. "I know that when you approved this program, you must have done it because of me, but you didn't look at my resume in detail. There are some things that you don't know and I don't blame you. So, I want to tell you that the ghost hand is really nothing." As he said that, Chen Guang slowly raised the pencil and placed it on the tip of this guy's nose. "You're going to..." Chen Guang took a step back and swung the sharpener upwards. The new pencil made a slight rippling sound, and the powdery sawdust scattered like smoke from a firecracker. Immediately, Chen Guang placed the sharpener back on the front desk. He stuffed the pencil into the hands of the Central TV leader and said with a smile, "You might need a magnifying glass, no, a microscope. Actually, I just want to tell you, don't worry about anything. According to our previous agreement, let me be the first to go on stage and then record the program. I can guarantee that this will be the program team's highest viewership rating in recent years, and the program's best episode." What? The program team leader took the pencil in a daze, still not understanding. "Because the person standing in front of you is a god in this field. Thank you." After saying that, Chen Guang turned around and left. At the entrance of the hall, there was a sign for the contestants' break room. The Central TV leader held the pencil, his face full of confusion. He squinted his eyes and looked at the tip of the pencil, not understanding. What's the meaning behind it? Right, didn't he just use the sharpener to scratch it? Why does it look like it has exploded? His squinted eyes became smaller and smaller and he finally found something different. There was something written on the tip of the pencil. "Chief Wang, we have a magnifying glass here," the receptionist reminded him kindly. Chapter 681. "Shaolin, this looks like a statue of a person?" It was rare for Chief Wang to be together with the receptionist. He was usually very careful with his image and had to keep a distance from these young and beautiful female colleagues, but this was too strange for him to understand. The receptionist named Shaolin shook her head and gasped. "Chief Wang, this is Robot Zero, the biological armored combat robot that Ling Boli piloted in the EVA." "Robot Zero? Eva. What's that?" Chief Wang, who was in his 50s, would not understand these young people. Anyway, it's a robot. Shaolin was not in the mood to explain the two-dimensional knowledge to Chief Wang. She only looked at the magnifying glass and sighed. "Oh my god, this isn't just a simple likeness. Oh my god. The lines, the joints, the armor, it's like it's alive. If it could be colored, it would look exactly like the figurine I just bought." As the girl spoke, she pointed at the figurine in the corner of the office table. The figurine was about 10 centimeters tall and was officially authorized by Bandai. It was imported and had excellent workmanship. In that instant, Chen Guang had clearly carved it according to the figurine. Chief Wang shook his head blankly. "Impossible. This is impossible." Kobayashi was getting more and more confused. The more she looked at it, the more incredulous she felt. Her figurine was assembled from hundreds of parts. How could it be cut into the exact same shape? Even the external armor on her right forearm had the exact same shape. Scary. Shaolin thought about it and said, "I'll go get a microscope from the program team next door. Give me a few minutes." 10 minutes later, Chief Wang and Shaolin stared at the image taken by the high-powered microscope on the computer, dumbfounded. The entire figurine was about 3 millimeters tall. Other than the lack of color and the fact that it was pure black, it was exactly the same as Shaolin's figurine. Chief Wang's hand holding the pencil was shaking. He could not understand the principle behind this even if he was beaten to death. How did he do it? He clearly just slashed it with a single slash. Why did he do that? Maybe it's because he's really God? Shaolin's eyes were shining. She clenched her fists and prayed silently. "May God bless me. If my future boyfriend's fingers are even 1/10 as nimble as mine, my life will be worth it." When Manager Wang arrived at the players' break room, his mind was muddled. He was still holding the pencil in his hand. No matter how he tried to construct a picture in his mind, he had no idea how Qin Guang had managed to carve out Machine Zero in one go. Qin Guang looked at him and knew that he had achieved his goal. He took the pencil back from him. "Director Wang, don't ask me. I won't tell you anything. The pencil was given to me by your employee, and the knife is also hers. You only need to understand one thing. I used less than a second to sharpen the pencil like this. Now, do you still want to discuss Demon Hand Hikari with me?" Chief Wang shook his head like a rattled drum. "Don't think about it. Don't think about it at all." Qin Guang pressed the tip of the pencil on the chair and flattened it under Chief Wang's pained gaze. "So, can we start recording the show on time?" Chief Wang's eyes widened. What a pity. Such a perfect piece of art was crushed by him just like that. He must be torturing and taking revenge on me, a patient with OCD. Damn it. After waiting for a few seconds, Chief Wang came back to his senses. He looked at his watch and realized that there were only 10 minutes left before the official start of the recording. He hurried to the director's room and shouted, "Everyone get into position. Don't King dawdle." Qin Guang smiled and shrugged. He thought to himself, "Bro, how can I explain it to you? You might think it was just one knife, but in that instant I swung it at least 100 times. Unlike other skills, the seemingly useless pencil sharpening skill was, in a sense, the most unreasonable skill that Qin Guang had mastered so far. Because when he achieved the achievement in the world in the cup, his arm was under the special blessing of the world in the cup. Even in the outside world, as long as he held a pen in one hand and a knife in the other, his whole body would be blessed by the mysterious power of the Holy Grail. After mastering the high-frequency vibration of the world of Kirin's arm, his pencil sharpening ability was even further enhanced. It was even better than when he was training in the world in the cup. Once he started to sharpen, the ability he displayed was not a human ability at all. I don't usually show off. When I do, I scare myself to tears, okay? In other words, as long as the pencil was replaced with something of a different thickness, his trick would not work. But this time, the project of the Guinness Challenge was pencil sharpening. It was impossible for him to lose, okay? He couldn't lose even if he wanted to. Qin Guang turned his head and looked at the group of foreigners sitting not far away. If he guessed correctly, this group of people should be the master-level employees of Smith Jewelry. The oldest among them should be over 50 years old, and the youngest should be 30 years old. The yellow man sitting in the middle, surrounded by the stars, should be the Japanese Hiroto Aoyama. Looking at his slender fingers, his muscles and bones were different from ordinary people's. He did have some amazing kung fu skills. The name Ghost Hand was not for nothing. If it was another project, Qin Guang might not necessarily win. But since it was pencil sharpening, he could only apologize. Sensing his provocative gaze, Hiroto Aoyama and the group of Smith Jewelry employees all turned to look at him. That's him, the reckless challenger. "Mr. Aoyama, Mrs. Smith wants us to win more quickly. If you win the competition in the end, Mrs. Smith will consider handing over all the business in Japan to you." Hiroto Aoyama nodded. "I won't let Mrs. Smith down." He couldn't help but recall the last time he performed on the street in Tokyo's underground tunnel. Everything looked the same as before. The dim light in the underground tunnel scattered in the long tunnel. There was no warmth, only bone-chilling cold. The homeless man curled up on the ground beside him, wrapped in a thick coat, was also shivering in the cold. Frantic mosquitoes buzzed around the light on the ceiling, hitting the lampshade and making popping sounds, as if drowning out the growling in their stomachs. When he was at his most desperate, Mrs. Smith came down from the sky like an angel and asked him to carve a head for her using rice on the table. He was shocked by the gorgeous clothes on the angel. His fingers had never been so agile. It usually took him 8 seconds to finish sketching a statue, but this time he finished it in 5 seconds. From then on, Mrs. Smith, who had the body of an angel, opened a window to his gloomy life. Although some of the memories made him sick, the results were always gratifying. Most of what he had today was thanks to Mrs. Smith. So, today, even if it was just to make her happy, he had to win quickly. With that in mind, he began to rub his fingers subconsciously. The eyes of the employees of Smith Jewelry next to him were involuntarily attracted to Hiroto Aoyama's fingers. It was really amazing. As expected of Mr. Aoyama. His skills didn't show any signs of decline because of his age. Instead, they were getting better. Marianne Smith, as the chairman of Guinness Asia Pacific, was already seated in the guest seat in the recording hall. Powell and another staff member sat on either side of her, one on the left and the other on the right. Usually she wouldn't sit in this seat. She wasn't even interested in watching a normal program recording, But today was obviously a special day. Mrs. Smith was half lying on the leather chair in the guest seat, moving her body with some difficulty. Powell, when Qin Guang loses in the challenge mode, go and tell him that if he doesn't make any compromises, the door of Guinness will be closed to him forever. Also, you'd better tell him that I, Marianne, have a wide circle of friends. Many celebrities in the Wuxia entertainment circle are my friends. He will definitely pay for his arrogance yesterday. Powell was extremely disgusted, but he put on a respectful face and said, "Yes, esteemed chairman." After waiting for another 10 minutes, the audience entered the hall one after another, and the seats were all filled up. Usually, these people signed up online and were selected through a series of behind-the-scenes operations. Their task was to clap and scream when necessary to ensure the effect of the program. However, this time the audience seemed to be a little restless. The lights in the studio had dimmed, but the whispers in the crowd didn't stop for a long time. Director Wang had to shout into the microphone to make these people calm down a little. When the studio finally returned to normal, Director Wang turned off the microphone and said with a straight face, "What the hell? Why are the quality of the audience this time so low?" The staff member next to him quickly explained, "Director Wang, it's my fault. There were too many people signing up online this time. When we selected people, the system made a mistake. We chose real audience members." Director Wang wanted to kick him. Why didn't he inform him earlier that something like this had happened? If they weren't experienced audience members, the situation today would have gone out of control. In his mind, he thought of the zero machine that Qin Guang had carved out with a knife. If he were an ordinary audience member, he might not be able to control his emotions when witnessing such a miracle with his own eyes. In the audience seats, 17 or 18 bald men gathered together, and they seemed to be very eye-catching. Yes, that's right, Qin Guang's old acquaintance, the bald president of the Anti-Light Alliance, had brought his brothers to support him. This old man must have mastered some special skills. As long as Qin Guang went on stage in public, he would definitely appear unshakably, rain or shine. Even if Qin Guang changed the venue of his appearance from the 5 capitals to Yanjing, it still wouldn't stop him from chasing after his idol. The people around him were naturally his comrades who were as close as brothers. In fact, hundreds of people in the entire Anti-Light Alliance had signed up. However, because Qin Guang had publicized this during the live broadcast, the audience registration for the Guinness conference, which no one cared about before, suddenly exploded, and the competition became extremely fierce. The total number of people signing up online was more than 200,000, but less than 1,000 people were selected. Excluding the 500 people who had been manipulated under the table, the actual selection rate was less than 1%. On the surface, the success rate was also only 1%. Even with the president's mysterious blessing, the entire Anti-Light Alliance had more than 800 people, and only about 20 people had entered. In fact, this was already very strong. As expected of the president, our success rate is as high as 1%. It must be the president's spirit in heaven that is blessing us. The vice president looked very excited. He was a fanatical supporter of Qin Guang, but he didn't have the opportunity to listen to Qin Guang's teachings. Otherwise, he would have easily become a noble believer. The president stepped on his foot. "Shut your crow's mouth. I'm not dead yet. Are you really hoping for me to die so that you can usurp the throne?" No. President, I definitely didn't think that way. If not for your blessing, at most, only 5 of us could have entered, the vice president said sincerely. The other bald members also looked at the president with gratitude. The bald president silently wiped away his tears. As a president who lived among a group of die-hard Qin Guang fans, it was really tough. He really didn't understand why the Anti-Light Alliance was getting further and further away from his original goal. There must be something wrong with the way it was opened. What? Your president is so powerful? Our whole class is Brother Allrounder's fan. We heard that Brother Allrounder would be participating this week, so we signed up together. In the end, I was the only one selected. We are so pitiful. Someone overheard their conversation and became interested in the Anti-Light Alliance. The members immediately started to show off. Of course. We have a total of 800 brothers that signed up, and 20 were selected. Do you see our heads? Do you see our president? Brother Allrounder is also bald. This is his summoning. There is a mysterious bond between us and Brother Allrounder. Brother, are you also a fan of Brother Allrounder? Why don't you hurry up and join us? Must I shave my head? But I'm a girl. I'm sorry. We are the righteous Anti-Light Alliance. We never accept female members. I heard that there are girls in the Pink Light Alliance. You can contact them. Can I ask my boyfriend to join you? Yes, but you have to remind him not to pay the membership fee. He must be careful of our president. We are a non-profit organization. The bald president silently wiped away his tears. He seemed to have understood something. His heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Zhu Jun. I am your host, Dong Qing. Welcome to the Guinness Conference. The male and female hosts walked out from both sides of the stage and stood in the center. The recording of the Guinness Conference began. The audience suddenly tensed up. The show was about to begin. The staff in the contestants' lounge shouted, "The contestants whose names I have called, please follow me to the back of the stage. The recording has begun. Thank you for your cooperation." Chen Guang turned his head and exchanged glances with Hiroto Aoyama. He grinned and walked to the front. Chapter 682. Sigh. Zhu, do you know why our Guinness conference is getting more and more popular? The female host, Dong Qing, smiled. Zhu Jun pretended to be at a loss. Why? It's because we don't have to worry about food and clothing anymore. Our material life is more abundant, and the people have more time to focus on the spiritual life. Dong Qing kept Dong Shuebing in suspense. What does the spiritual life have to do with the Guinness conference? We are challenging the limits of humanity. Zhu Jun and Dong Qing echoed each other. Dong Qing blinked. You don't understand. Everyone has their own little Superman in their heart. Only when they don't lack anything in their life can this little Superman jump out and think about the things that they used to be good at or wanted to do but couldn't do. You don't understand. Everyone has their own little Superman in their heart. For example, when I was young, I was very good at spinning the pen. When I twirled the pen on my fingers, it was like a flower blooming. I was taught a lesson by my teacher because of this. Now I am old and there is no teacher to look after me. But my hand is also stiff and I can't turn the pen anymore. Dong Qing purposely pouted and put on a pitiful look. Zhu Jun nodded. Isn't that right? Your teacher really killed a genius. If you practice hard, you might even be able to participate in the Olympic Games. We don't need to think about the Olympic Games. They don't have this event, but we are here in Guinness. What's our mission? Challenge the limits. Surpass yourself. Write your brilliant ideas into the Guinness Book. The two hosts said in unison. After that, Zhu Jun changed to a high-pitched voice. Next, let's welcome our first challenger, Chen Guang. What he wants to challenge is something that all of us have done since we were young. He will tell us that sharpening pencils is also a skill. Dong Qing also said. That's right. I don't have the Olympic Games for spinning pens, but Chen Guang has our Guinness conference for sharpening pencils. Everyone, let's witness a miracle. As the music started, Chen Guang, who was wearing a straw hat, walked out from the back of the stage and went straight to the center of the stage. The straw hat couldn't hide his devastatingly handsome face, but it could hide the new bandage on his head, making him look even more imposing under the spotlight. He looked like a divine soldier who had descended from the heavens. His handsomeness had reached a new realm, a new height. The above content was purely Chen Guang's personal fantasies. It was purely fictional. If there were any similarities, it must be the effects of his die-hard fans' beauty enhancement. Also, in order to make Chen Guang's challenge more convincing, we have invited 8 world-class craftsmen from the Guinness Association. They will compete with Chen Guang. They are Mr. Hiroto Aoyama, the ghost hand from Japan. He is the champion of 10 consecutive handicraft awards in Japan. He is also the holder of many world records. He can carve a grain of rice into a lifelike portrait in 5 seconds. Mr. Santos from Mexico. Is Mr. Bell from Australia. Is Mrs. Smith listened to the translator beside her translate and said unhappily, "Since when did it become an invitation for my people to compete with him on the same stage?" Powell quickly explained, "Mr. Chairman, please don't be angry. The program team of China television station has to consider the effect of the program. It's more reasonable to say it this way." Mrs. Smith nodded. "That's true. I can't let others know that I'm deliberately making things difficult for him." After a short while, accompanied by all kinds of background music, lighting, and special effects, Chen Guang stood on the stage with a total of 8 so-called gatekeepers in the challenge mode. In front of them was a long table. In front of each of them was a total of 10 pencils, a total of 100 pencils, and 3 different sizes of pencil sharpeners. Chen Guang stood in the middle, and Hiroto Aoyama stood beside Chen Guang. The host was introducing the rules of the competition. Hiroto Aoyama subconsciously turned his head to look at Chen Guang. This poor guy. He looks quite good. He probably rejected Mrs. Smith's pursuit. How stupid. What's wrong with Mrs. Smith? Even if she felt disgusted at the time, wouldn't it be over if she closed her eyes and endured it? This was a life-changing opportunity that had fallen from the sky. She was the owner of Smith Jewelry with a net worth of $1 billion USD. She was the current heir of the famous Tepest family in Europe and America. Dong Qing explained in detail, "Ladies and gentlemen, the rules of our competition are very simple. Every contestant has a total of 5 minutes. If Chen Guang can sharpen the most Eiffel Towers in these 5 minutes, he will be recognized by Guinness as the best sharpener in the world. Please look at the big picture. This Eiffel Tower is qualified. From this angle, doesn't it look exactly like the tower in the picture? Of course it can't just be the appearance. Everyone look at the 4 legs of the tower. That's right, the bottom must be hollow." Zhu Jun exclaimed again, "My God, isn't this too difficult? Won't the tip of the pencil break if you're not careful?" Dong Qing nodded. "Of course it's difficult, but this is what Guinness strives for." "That's right. It's because it's difficult that we can challenge our limits. Now let's welcome the Guinness certifiers, Mr. Powell and Mr. Bloom, to the stage for the final verification." Zhu Jun waved his hand, and the 2 certifiers, Powell and Bloom, who were sitting in the VIP seats, walked onto the stage with smiles on their faces. "Mr. Chen, it's not too late to change your mind." Powell pretended to check the pencil and knife in front of Chen Guang absent-mindedly. Chen Guang opened his mouth slightly and said in a low voice, "No, you can tell her exactly what I said. Just tell her that I think she's disgusting. You'll regret it. You don't know Mrs. Smith's reputation." Powell put down the pencil slowly and said with a gloomy face. Chen Guang rolled his eyes indifferently. "You don't know who I am, so don't talk nonsense. Get out of here." Powell's hand that was holding the pencil knife trembled violently. He really wanted to stab Chen Guang with the knife. What did he say just now? Powell had just sat down in the VIP seats with shaking hands when Mrs. Smith, who was unwilling to give up, asked. "He told me to get out of here." The camera was right on his face. Powell had no choice but to squeeze out a smile. Then he squeezed out this sentence. Mrs. Smith's face turned serious. "That B** starred. That's right, he's a B** starred." As the camera turned away, Powell immediately put on a fierce face and stared at Chen Guang. "Damn arrogant kid, just wait for your bad luck." Among the nearly 1,000 people in the audience that day, about 500 came for Chen Guang. Apart from a few anti-fans like the bald president, most of the others were fans of Chen Guang. Deep down, these people hoped that Chen Guang would win, but after hearing Zhu Jun and Dong Qing introduce the other 8 contestants, they were a little uncertain. In particular, Ghost Hand Hikaru Qingshan was too famous. Chen Guang was trying to break the world record, but Hikaru Qingshan already had several world records. Although the other contestants were not as famous as Hikaru Qingshan, they were still somewhat famous. The countdown had already started, but the whispers of the audience had not stopped. "Can you stop shaking your legs? My bones are about to fall apart." The bald president pushed the vice president beside him. "I can't help it. I'm too nervous. What if brother all-rounder loses?" The vice president was worried. The bald president glared at him. "Don't tease me. I used to look forward to him losing every day no matter what, even if he lost once. But when did he ever make me happy?" The vice president and the other members of the Anti-Light Alliance suddenly understood. "So, Mr. President, you're the one who trusts brother all-rounder the most out of all of us. You're indeed the president." The bald president's face stiffened. He cursed in his heart, "I really can't be friends with you guys anymore." On the other side, the host's countdown had already begun. This was the first and perhaps the last international pencil sharpening competition, which was different from the usual big names, was about to officially begin. At the beginning, the camera wasn't focused on Chen Guang. Instead, it was focused on Hikaru Qingshan, the most famous contestant. At that moment, this world-renowned ghost hand had his eyes closed. His fingers were spread out and pressed lightly on the table. He seemed to have entered some kind of mysterious state. Those who were familiar with him knew that this ghost hand was getting serious. Only when he decided to go all out would he close his eyes and adjust his breathing. He was especially scary in this state. "I must win. And I must win cleanly." Hikaru Qingshan muttered in his heart. Memories of when he was young and practicing ninjutsu in Ninja Canyon slowly surfaced in his mind. It was as if he had returned to his younger days. The ninja ki that was almost exhausted slowly surged up from his lower abdomen, through his arms and condensed on his hands. The host was still counting down. 3. The veins on Hikaru Qingshan's arms gradually appeared. 2. An invisible force was emitted from his fingers. 1. Hikaru Qingshan opened his eyes abruptly. On the big screen at the back of the studio, Hikaru Qingshan's eyes seemed to be glowing. He grabbed the pencil with lightning speed and picked up a pencil sharpener with his other hand. His mind was blank. The knife rose and fell and sawdust flew everywhere. Hikaru Qingshan's every knife was so precise that it was even more exquisite and faster than the processing machines made in Germany. In less than a second and a half, the pencil lead had been sharpened. With a shake of his right hand, the largest pencil sharpener was replaced with a second sharpener. Then, with 4 strokes, the outline of the Eiffel Tower appeared. His eyes were focused and his expression was solemn. He stared at the tip of his pen as if he was on a pilgrimage. This was the skill that he relied on to survive. He was extremely devout in his skills. Another second and a half passed, but the knife in his hand had been replaced with the smallest one, number 3. Ordinary people could not even see his movements with their naked eyes. Only the high-speed camera that was locked on Hikaru Qingshan's hands could capture the slight but high-frequency vibration of his right hand. The powder on the pencil lead flew out, and the 4 legs of the Eiffel Tower quickly took shape. His movements were so precise that the extremely fragile tip of the pen seemed so stable that there was no sign of it breaking. Mr. Qingshan is in great condition today, Powell said as he stared at the big screen. Mrs. Smith nodded with satisfaction. Of course. Mr. Qingshan never disappoints me. Qin Guang is dead meat. It's too late for him to beg for mercy now. Mrs. Smith grinned sinisterly. He has successfully angered me. Only the humblest of repentance can satisfy me. While the two of them were chatting, Hiroto Aoyama had finished sharpening his first pencil. He was very satisfied with his performance today. It only took him 5 seconds to sharpen the first pencil, and the whole process was as smooth as flowing water. He was confident that he could increase his speed to 4.5 seconds, or even faster. Later on, his speed might slow down again, but it did not matter. In 5 minutes, he could sharpen at least 50 pencils that met the standard. Although it looked so simple, the tip of the pen was extremely fragile. A slight mistake during the process would cause the tip to break easily, and all his previous efforts would be wasted. It was not something that an ordinary person could do. He did not even have the mood to look at Qin Guang's performance next to him. He knew that he represented the limit of human beings. As long as he continued to perform normally, no one would be a match for him. From time to time, there was a cracking sound coming from beside him. It sounded like Qin Guang had used too much force to sharpen the pencil. As Hikaru Qingshan began to sharpen the second pencil, he thought to himself, "You deserve it. Do you think we're playing with you? You're doomed from the moment you offended Mrs. Smith, okay? Even the other employees of Smith Jewelry are much better than you, okay?" Director Wang began to scold them in the director's room. "I told you to focus the camera on Qin Guang. Where are you filming? Are you an idiot?" The PD in charge of cutting the camera felt wronged. "Director Wang, I'm filming Qin Guang on the 3rd camera, but he's always sharpening the pen until it explodes. Why are we filming him? Look at how beautiful Hikaru Qingshan and Santos are. The audience would definitely like to see a successful scene, right? Although Mr. Qin is a friend, he's in such a bad state today. If we film him, won't we be making him look bad? What do you know? If I tell you to film him, then film him. Otherwise, get out of my sight." While Director Wang scolded the unlucky main PD, he felt like he was the only one sober and pretentious when everyone else was drunk. "What do you know? You all think that Qin Guang is done for, but do you know that although he looks like he's sharpening the pen until it explodes, he's actually sharpening the pen until it explodes? You've missed the key scene. How stupid." Hikaru Qingshan quickly went back to his state of not paying attention to what was happening outside the window. He began to sharpen the pen with all his might. This was his strongest state and he had never failed before. However, he did not know that the scene on the big screen behind him had unknowingly changed. Although there were still shots of him from time to time, most of the time, it was Qin Guang's personal close-up. In fact, Qin Guang looked quite bored at that moment. He seemed to have been using the smallest sharpener, the number 3. He repeated the same action mechanically, picking up a pen and swinging the knife at it. The tip of the pencil exploded. Then he put it on the table and immediately switched to another pencil. Compared to the others, Qin Guang's actions looked like child's play. He must have used too much force and broken the pen. At first, the audience was also confused. They did not understand why the program team had filmed Qin Guang in such an embarrassing scene. It was not until about a minute into the competition, When the high-definition camera zoomed in and began to give a close-up of Qin Guang's pencil that had exploded from sharpening, that the audience gasped. What was going on? What was that? A beautiful and neat, art-like miniature Eiffel Tower? Why did every pencil he casually threw on the table look like it had been sharpened successfully? Was it exactly the same as the previous example? What exactly happened? Didn't it look like it had exploded from the sharpening? Chapter 683. What the hell? Mrs. Smith immediately stood up from her seat. Cheating? He must have cheated. Powell and Bloom were also confused. They had carefully examined Qin Guang's pencils and knives, and there was no way they were specially prepared in advance. The audience was even more confused. Even the chairman of the Anti-Light Alliance, who was certain that Qin Guang would be able to show off, was also confused. Although I know he's going to win, can someone explain the theory to me? What the hell is going on? With one slash an Eiffel Tower appeared? A little explanation? What's this? The vice chairman thought for a long time. This is probably the realm of gods? Due to the unusually large number of non-professional audiences in the studio, most of these people who participated in the recording for the first time did not know the rules. Whispers rose and fell, intertwined with each other, and the buzzing sound gathered and formed a resonance, overwhelming the passionate soundtrack that was playing in the studio at this time, making the whole studio so noisy. Master Bell from Australia was the first to notice that something was wrong. He needed about 10 seconds to finish a pencil. It had been about a minute and a half since the start of the competition, and he had already finished 10 pencils. During a short pause, he could not help but look back at the big screen behind him. He happened to see a close-up of the pile of sharpened pencils that Qin Guang had placed on the table. What? Then he turned his head again and saw that there was only one set of pencils left in Qin Guang's hand. That was 10 pencils. F***CK. What happened? Has he finished 90 pencils? It's been less than 100 seconds since the start of the competition. Mr. Bell was scared out of his wits. He looked at Hiroto Aoyama again. Frankly speaking, Ghost Hand was indeed very strong. He had already finished more than 20 pencils, more than twice as fast as Bell himself. However, compared to Qin Guang, he was not at the same level at all. Hiroto Aoyama was still focused. His face shone with confidence. However, compared to Qin Guang next to him, the more confident he was, the more pathetic he looked. God, thought Bell, I must still be dreaming. Let me sleep for another hour so I won't have this ridiculous hallucination. Poor Mr. Aoyama, poor fellows, poor me. What kind of monster are we playing against? What was the principle behind this? In less than 10 seconds, Qin Guang had already put down the last pencil in his left hand. He raised his right hand and said loudly, I'm sorry, I finished sharpening all my pencils. Can you bring me another 200 pencils? Qin Guang's words were like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Isato Aoyama was startled back to his senses. His hand trembled, and the tip of his sword even cut the tip of his left hand. He raised his head blankly and turned to look at Qin Guang. His eyes slowly focused and then fell on the 100 sharpened pencils in front of him. Baka. What is this? 100? Is it done? He raised his head to look at the countdown timer on the big screen. Only 100 seconds had passed. He then looked at the pencils in front of him. 23, which meant that he had sharpened one every 35 seconds. It was definitely an extraordinary performance. But what did this B** do? Why is this happening? What happened? This is completely different from what I thought. Isato Aoyama was stunned. He even forgot that he was in the middle of a competition. He subconsciously wanted to pick up Qin Guang's pencil and check it. However, Qin Guang slapped his hand away. Watch your hand. Don't touch my pen. Fearing that Hisato Aoyama could not understand him, Qin Guang even deliberately spoke in Japanese. Hisato Aoyama was stunned when he suddenly heard such standard Japanese. He then withdrew his hand in embarrassment and looked at his table. He kept reminding himself not to panic and not to be afraid. He was deliberately sharpening. He was just trying to scare me. At that moment, the host, Dong Qing, ran back to Qin Guang with a box of pencils. The spare pencils were placed on the small table next to her. They did not have to wait for long. Although he had already wasted more than 10 seconds, Qin Guang did not care at all. He picked up the pencils and continued sharpening. Alright, sharpening pencils was really boring. No matter how much he exaggerated, it was still the same. He picked up the pen with his left hand and raised it in front of him. Then he swung his right hand. The moment the tip of the knife and the tip of the pen touched each other, there was a brief pause. Then the tip of the pen exploded. He then threw the pen on the table and picked up another one. Bang! It exploded again. That was it. The repetitive process was really boring. It was really boring. It was not cool at all. It was so boring that even with special effects, there was no way to save it. Although ordinary people could not see his movements clearly, Hisato Aoyama was the ghost hand. As a former genius student of Ninja Canyon, his eyes were much sharper than ordinary people. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Qin Guang's pen. He hoped that Qin Guang was sharpening it randomly, but his emotions told him that it was impossible. In that instant, the powdery sawdust mixed with the black powder of the pen lead was too strange, too special. This was not the normal appearance of a damaged piece of paper. Wait a minute. The moment the tip of his knife touched the tip of the pen, his hand seemed to have become blurry. It was like the old CRT TV when the voltage was unstable. Qin Guang was about to put down the pen, but he felt uncomfortable being stared at by this guy. He turned around and looked at him. You don't want to play anymore, do you? Are you going to sharpen it yourself? Why are you staring at me? Beg me and I'll let you win. Are you bored? After that, Qin Guang ignored him and continued sharpening. This Hisato Aoyama is really pitiful. Ghost hand? He looks like he's scared to the point of peeing his pants. You can't say that. He's really good. Even the movement of sharpening a pencil is so smooth. Whose side are you on? Are you from China? F***ck, if I can change my nationality so easily, I'd really thank you. That mud blast is good, but he can't withstand Brother Almighty's 1/. F***ck, I don't understand what's going on. That's right. No matter how good Hisato Aoyama is, he's just an ordinary person. He's nothing. Brother Almighty's move is godlike in the game. The whispers in the audience grew louder, but this time Director Wang did not jump out to remind everyone to calm down. He knew that nothing he said would work. At most he could just silence them later. Hisato Aoyama clenched his fists tightly. He was thinking hard. I can't care about him anymore. I have to control my own pace. This must be an illusion. He must be playing with me. Hisato Aoyama shook his head fiercely, then continued sharpening with all his might. He did not notice that the other Smith Jewelry employees at the same long table had already put down their knives and pens. Instead, they turned their heads and stared blankly at the big screen behind them. No one was filming Hisato Aoyama anymore. The big screen was filled with Qin Guang's boring movements. Thanks to the new high-speed camera that the Guinness program team had just replaced, after a series of emergency adjustments, a frame-by-frame analysis that had been slowed down 100 times appeared on the big screen. From the moment the tip of Qin Guang's knife touched the tip of the pen to the moment the tip of the knife moved away, the scene, which had lasted less than 0.3 seconds, was stretched to 30 seconds. The audience could finally vaguely see the tip of the knife cutting through the wooden shell on the tip of the pen at an extremely fast speed, as if it was cutting through tofu. The tip of the knife moved back and forth, then moved back and forth again. At the same time, the pencil was spinning in his left hand. However, everything happened too fast. Qin Guang's movements were very small, but the frequency was very fast. That was why the wooden shell showed signs of being cut into powder and then falling apart. Then, with the help of Qin Guang, the regular tip of the pen broke free from the wooden shell and appeared in the air. The outline of the Eiffel Tower appeared in the air with 4 swishing sounds. What was truly terrifying was Qin Guang's movements. His hand vibrated at a high frequency again. The tip of the knife was pressed against the tip of the pen, and the lines of the Eiffel Tower's support frame quickly appeared. Every line was extremely clear and regular. Most importantly, this was a frame-by-frame analysis that had been sped up 100 times, but it still looked very fast on the screen. After 0.3 seconds, the hollow bottom of the tower was completely formed, and the perfect Eiffel Tower sculpture was fresh out of the oven. This meant that Qin Guang only needed 0.3 seconds to sharpen a pen, and most of the rest of the time was wasted on picking up and putting down the pen. When the slow-motion replay ended, the screen was restored to the scene of Qin Guang's knife and explosion. The combination of fast and slow was particularly refreshing. Everyone was finally sure that this guy was not messing around. This guy was really a completely unreasonable one-knife style. At the moment, Takedo Aoyama looked very pitiful. He had no distractions in his mind, and his expression was focused. Every cut was methodical and his movements were fast and precise. He was like a work of art. However, it was of no use. After the competition, if he found out that all the pencils that Qin Guang sharpened were qualified, he would probably start to doubt his life and go crazy. If it were not for her veto power, Marianne Harding would probably have left early. Impossible, this must be an illusion. Otherwise they must have cheated. The upper-class lady who was famous in the social circle said through gritted teeth, "Chairman, shut up, Powell, you piece of trash. Is this how you become a certification officer? How dare you cheat in front of us?" Mrs. Harding glared at Powell. Powell's mouth twitched and he was already cursing in his heart. "You are the one who thinks that this is your modeling circle in Europe and America. You want to hit on any handsome man you see, and when you can't hit on him, you make us run errands for you. All right, since this is within the rules of Guinness World, I will acquiesce. Now, it is Qin Guang who is too scary and the employees in your company are not capable at all, but you are throwing the problem at me?" Powell could not help but be angry. Mrs. Harding had been ordering him around for the past 2 days, and in the end, he was the one who was being humiliated by her. "Don't go too far. You are Marianne, not Elizabeth." Finally, when the countdown reached the last second, Qin Guang stopped. He did not seem to have any abnormalities. His expression was calm and his hands were in his trouser pockets. In front of him were exactly 300 sharpened pencils. Hiroto Aoyama's hands were trembling and his face was pale. He reluctantly put down the knife in his hand. There were about 60 pens in front of him, but about 20 of them were cut. He was reluctant to turn his head and look in Qin Guang's direction. He was afraid to see a nightmarish scene. But he could not avoid it. From time to time he would turn his head to look at Qin Guang's position like a thief, and then he would hold his forehead in pain. "I'm seeing a ghost." Time turned back and his memory seemed to go back to yesterday. He was still lying in bed, discussing with his wife about opening another branch store. "Maybe I was too tired so I fell asleep while talking. I must still be dreaming. That's right, when I wake up, this nightmare will be over." Gradually he felt his head become very heavy. He became more and more absent-minded. He shook his head and his eyes became misty. At that moment, the excited shouts of the nearly 1,000 audience members in the broadcast hall turned into the roar of a monster in a nightmare. It was deafening, as if it was sealed in his mind. It echoed everywhere, becoming more and more ear-piercing and loud, as if his head was about to explode. "I have lost. I have completely lost. I do not have the strength to struggle at all. I'm not a match for this monster at all. He is not human. Yes, that's right. He is the demon in my dream. I have lost to the demon in my dream. It's okay. Let me have a good sleep and I will disappear from this ridiculous stage." He pressed his hands down on the table and his knuckles turned white. He opened and closed his eyes and his nose twitched. His expression was somewhat ferocious. The two hosts did not know that Hiroto Aoyama was in an abnormal state. They stood on the stage again and began to invite the two certification officers, Powell and Bloom, to count and inspect. In fact, this was completely meaningless. If Hiroto Aoyama was the person who controlled the world record, then Qin Guang was the god who had violently raised the world record by 7 or 8 times. On the other side, the cameraman had already pushed the equipment over. The special microscopic camera randomly selected and focused on the 300 Iron Tower pencil refills. Every pencil was perfect and impeccable. Qin Guang clapped his hands. He did not even bother to greet the others. He minded his own business and sat on the chair next to the contestants' resting area. He was about to cross his legs, but when he remembered that this was the recording of the show, he endured it. Powell and Bloom had no choice but to take their magnifying glasses and go on stage. Even if they were unwilling to admit it, they could not simply say that Qin Guang's iron towers were not up to standard. "Because there are too many pencils, we will use the method of random inspection. Mr. Bloom and I will each check 20 pencils. If there are 40 pencils in total, then Qin Guang's challenge will naturally be successful." Powell just wanted to end this farce as soon as possible. He recalled what had happened earlier, and the look of disdain in Qin Guang's eyes when he had looked at him and Mrs. Smith. Powell felt that they were clowns who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in front of God. This was too ridiculous. The challenge mode was a complete joke. Chapter 684. Qualified. Qualified. Powell and Broom tried hard to make their voices sound more spirited and less listless. After all, witnessing the birth of a new Guinness World Record was something to be happy about. Every time the two of them said "qualified" in their broken Mandarin, the audience cheered in unison. Qin Guang leaned back in his chair, feeling the threads of faith gradually flowing into him from the heads of the audience. He was very satisfied. He began to look forward to the effect of this program when it was broadcasted on television. In just a short period of time, about 1,000 spectators had provided more than 1,000 faith points in total. These audience members were at the scene and were more affected by the atmosphere of the outside world, so it was natural that their faith was much stronger than the average person's. The effect of the audience in front of the television would definitely be weaker, but if the number of people could reach 9 million, and they were all instigated by his own fans, the amount of faith gain could be expected. Oh, Baldy and the rest are here too. Qin Guang smiled and waved at the Anti-Light Alliance crowd, greeting his die-hard fans. Brother Almighty waved to us. He waved to us. The vice president was so excited that he almost fainted from happiness. Baldy curled his lips and glanced at Qin Guang disdainfully. That detestable guy had succeeded in showing off again. You will get your retribution sooner or later. Scum. Scum. Animal. Qin shimmy. Although he was cursing in his heart, a thread of faith actually popped out of his head and connected to Qin Guang's cup. Qin Guang almost laughed out loud. This guy hated him so much but had no choice but to worship him. It was so cute. Director Wang was also leaning back in his chair in the broadcasting room. It was a perfect start. He seemed to have foreseen the ratings for this episode. It would probably be the king of the Wednesday night slot after so many years. Happiness came too suddenly, catching people off guard. Director Wang had heard a legend in the industry. No matter which television station it was, as long as they had a big tree like Qin Guang, their ratings were guaranteed. From the Dechuan Province Arts Channel to the Dechuan Province Satellite TV, they had all become the pioneers. Now it was finally their Central TV Channel 13's turn. Previously he didn't quite believe it and took it as a joke. Now that he finally had the chance to experience what it was like to fly with Brother All-Rounder, it was so cool that it made his hair stand on end. At this moment his phone rang. When he picked it up, it turned out to be Deputy Director Lu DeBeo. I heard that Qin Guang is working in your program team? Lu DeBeo sounded a little excited. Director Wang nodded. Yes, Director Lu. I just finished recording Mr. Chen's part. What do you think? Did anything go wrong? Lu DeBeo seemed to be very concerned. Director Wang did not know what was going on, but he still said honestly, the performance was very good. Mr. Chen was sharpening a pencil. He is a god in this field. Those were his exact words. Sharpen pencils? Lu DeBeo was stunned. What the hell? Director Lu, don't be so surprised. I can't explain it clearly in such a short time. After I finish recording today, I'll bring a copy to your office for you to take a look. No problem. But you must remember, regarding Qin Guang's program, you must promote it in a positive manner. You must make the program look good and popular until he is satisfied. Do you understand? The station has just had a meeting. If there are no accidents, the station will allocate more resources to your program team for the next 3 days. Make good use of this opportunity and try to get the Wednesday night slot. Yes, sir. I will not disappoint you. Director Wang clenched his fist excitedly. Lu DeBeo had already hung up. He did not know why, but the leader seemed to place too much importance on Qin Guang's program team. But this was not something a small director like him should be thinking about. He only needed to use the leader's sword and push the matter to its death. The opportunity for me, old Wang, to make a comeback has come. It's like a pie falling from the sky. At this moment, the door to the director's office was suddenly pushed open. The loud bang shocked Director Wang, who was immersed in his meteoric rise. He tilted from his chair and nearly fell on his butt. What the hell? Don't you know we're recording a program now? Get lost. Before he could finish speaking, he realized it was Marianne Smith's plump body standing at the door. He suddenly stopped. This fat woman was up to something again. Director Wang supported himself on the chair and stood up. He forced himself to hide the unhappy expression on his face. Mrs. Smith looked around and walked in. Director Wang's assistant followed behind apologetically. Director Wang, Mrs. Smith said she has something to tell you. Old Wang secretly rolled his eyes. How could I not know what it is? Didn't you see me kneeling in front of Qin Guang in the challenge mode? Now you want to come here to stir up trouble? Is there something wrong with this foreigner's brain? Do you really think you're the boss just because you're rich? If it was before, Director Wang might have been afraid of Mrs. Smith. After all, she was the Guinness Asia-Pacific region's chairman. If she insisted on making things difficult for her, it would have a very negative impact on the program team. But now that he had hung up on Deputy Director Lu DeBeo, he had a deep understanding of the higher-ups. No matter how stubborn old Wang was, he could not go against Qin Guang just like Mrs. Smith wanted. Mrs. Smith, if you have anything to say, please say it directly. We're currently in the middle of recording, so I can't leave my post. Director Wang did not intend to avoid the others. She started chatting with Mrs. Smith in English with a very bad London suburban accent. Mrs. Smith looked at the other staff members in the studio unhappily. She was not very willing to say her request in front of so many people, but seeing that Director Wang's butt seemed to be glued to the chair, she could not do anything about it. I request that your program team cut out Chen Guang's program. She might as well get straight to the point. It was not a big deal even if others heard it. Mrs. Smith did not know that the super black-bellied Director Wang had already quietly turned on the microphone in the studio. Her words were not only heard by the people in the studio, but also resounded throughout the entire broadcast hall. Powell and Broom, who had just sat down dejectedly, were startled. They stood up from their seats. The two of them looked at each other. They knew that the fat woman could not hold it in and had run to the program team studio to make a scene. But why did their conversation appear in the broadcast hall? Did someone make a mistake and forget to turn off the microphone? Although many people in the audience in the hall could not understand English, there were always people who could translate for the others. Things suddenly became interesting. Mrs. Smith's words were like sodium metal thrown into boiling water, causing the entire broadcast hall to explode. Who is this stupid woman? Why does she have to cut out Brother All-Rounder's program? She's crazy. She's causing trouble? Chen Guang's expression also darkened, but he quickly calmed down. Director Wang was very black-bellied. He did not think that it was an accident that the microphone had been turned on. That old man had done it on purpose. On the other side, Powell and Broom had already gotten up quickly and were planning to head backstage. However, Chen Guang blocked their way. The two of you behind us is the program studio. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter, Chen Guang said with a chuckle as he crossed his hands. Get out of the way. Mrs. Smith is inside. Powell said as he tried to push Chen Guang. In terms of size, he was a size bigger than Chen Guang. Broom, on the other hand, planned to slip past him. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang grabbed the back of Broom's shirt with one hand and suddenly reached out with the other to press on Powell's shoulder. The terrifying force made the two tall foreigners unable to move. Chen Guang remained expressionless. I've just become a security guard for the television station. This is my job. If you try to force your way in, I don't mind sharpening your bones like pencils. Why don't you give it a try? The conversation in the studio was still going on when Director Wang's voice rang out again. Dear Mrs. Smith, although you're the chairman of the Guinness Society's Asia-Pacific region, your request is too ridiculous. Chen Guang's challenge has been verified by both the Guinness Society and our program team. It's fair and open, in line with the spirit of Guinness and the regulations of our television station. Why should we cut it? I'm sorry, but I can't agree to your request. The black-bellied comrade Old Wang had sold out Mrs. Smith's identity just like that. Some of the quick-witted audience members had already realized that it was the fat woman who had been sitting in the guest's seat earlier. She was the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region? What the hell? Those who offend the Chinese must be punished. Fine. A fat foreign woman like you came here to suppress Brother All-Rounder? Damn it, don't you know where you are? Mrs. Smith was stunned for a moment. How could she have expected Director Wang to reject her so decisively? She did not know that their conversation had directly appeared in the studio. Mr. Wang, since you know that I'm the chairman of the Guinness Society's Asia-Pacific region, you should know that I have a veto. Her plump body continued to press forward. However, Old Wang did not budge. Of course I know that, but as far as I know, your veto should be raised in public on stage, and you have to come up with a convincing reason. You shouldn't come to me during the recording process and ask me to cut Chen Guang's program for no reason. That's not a veto. That's called manipulation. Shut up. I told you to cut his scene, did you hear me? You yellow-skinned idiot. Monkey. Mariana lost control and her breathing became heavier. However, she did not know that it was even more out of control in the studio outside. Powell and Broom were frightened by the rapidly enraged crowd. The two of them sat on the ground, their minds buzzing. It was over, it was all over. Mrs. Smith was done for. She had humiliated the other party's skin color in such a semi-public setting. This was completely intolerable in the upper-class society of Europe and America. This was racism. She had crossed the line. She had gone crazy. Mrs. Smith, please watch your language. This is China and there are 1.5 billion yellow-skinned people here. We are not monkeys, we are the descendants of the dragon. Thank you. Old Wang was also angry. F***ck, I've been treating you with respect, and you're playing racism with me? Please go back and look at the calendar. This is the 21st century, not the era of the Eight-Nation Alliance's invasion of China. However, the furious Mrs. Smith had no intention of restraining herself. Do you know what your stupid actions will cost you? Believe it or not, on behalf of the Guinness Association, I will terminate our cooperation with you. Your stupid show can go to hell. Powell and Broom looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Come on, you represent the Guinness Association. If this matter were to get out, we would have to pack up and leave. Besides, it would not be a good thing for the Guinness Association to terminate the cooperation with China Central Television. They would lose the largest market in the world. Even if they lost Smith's jewelry, they might not be able to afford such a loss. Old Wang was shocked at first. He did not expect this person to be so crazy, but then he remembered Liu Debao's words. He made up his mind and said, "Is that so? If the association really decides to do so, then it's really regrettable. If you continue to be so unreasonable, I will indeed report this matter to my superiors. We will seriously consider the association's request and terminate our cooperation of many years. After all, China can also have our own certification system. No one is indispensable, right?" Mrs. Smith was completely dumbfounded. Her anger receded like the tide. In fact, she was just threatening him, but she did not expect him to respond so decisively. If the cooperation between the two parties was really ruined because of her, even if she was the boss of Smith's jewelry, she would not be able to explain it to the other people in the association. After all, the so-called non-profit Guinness Association was not only rich, but also rich people. Some of the people were even European and American nobles. She felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head. She quickly calmed down and said, "Mr. Wang, please forgive me for being rash just now. I was just a little..." At this time, she did not know that her words had been heard by the people outside. Director Wang waved his hand impatiently and said, "Mrs. Smith, I understand how you feel. Chen Guang is indeed handsome and has extraordinary charm, but we Huaxia people are a little more feudal, so your request is a little too much for him. As for me, I am just an inconspicuous staff doing my job. Please don't make things difficult for me. I'm sorry, please leave. I have to work." Since he was already black-bellied, Old Wang might as well be even more black-bellied. It was a pity that he could not go out and see for himself. He really wanted to know how lively it would be when the people in the studio heard that Mrs. Smith had tried to sleep with Chen Guang and came to make trouble for no reason. When Mrs. Smith angrily walked out of the director's room, Old Wang immediately turned off the microphone, put his hand on the table and rested his chin on his palm. "Anyway, you can make trouble. It doesn't matter if you make a scene today. At most, you can record for another day. As long as Chen Guang's scenes are done and edited in, I will be done. Since the scene was destined to get out of control, it would be better to make it even more explosive. Mrs. Smith, don't be scared to tears. Director Wang, this is not going to happen, right?" The assistant came over. Old Wang waved his hand carelessly and said, "It's not a big deal. Even if the sky doesn't fall, the big boss will take care of it. At most, we can change the sky. In the future, let's change the name of our show to Huaxia's 5,000-year unique skill. How about that? Very good, very good. Very domineering." Chapter 685. From the beginning to the end, Chen Guang blocked the backstage entrance, not giving Powell and Broom any chance. The two of them sat cross-legged on the floor dejectedly. Their minds were a mess. Although it was Mrs. Smith who had caused the trouble, the two of them, as staff members present, had to bear some responsibility for their negligence. What should they do now? The two of them had no choice but to stare blankly at the backstage with Chen Guang's leg between them. It was only a step away, but it felt like a chasm. Mrs. Smith finally came out. She took big strides, unable to conceal her anger. She still did not give up. Today was only a recording. As long as this crappy program was not broadcast, she would still have a chance to take Chen Guang's camera down. She did not know what the program team director was relying on, but it did not matter. He could choose not to give face to her alone. At most, she could just find a few friends from the association to greet the leader of the Huaxia television station. It was just to take away the camera of an internet celebrity. It shouldn't be that difficult, right? Hearing the thumping footsteps behind him, Chen Guang turned around to take a look, then quickly moved to the side, afraid that he would be tainted by this person's bad luck. B****, you've successfully angered me. Don't think that I can't do anything to you. You will regret your arrogance. With the situation turning out this way, Mrs. Smith no longer had the initial admiration for Chen Guang. She only secretly hated this guy for not knowing what was good for him. He had embarrassed her and put her in a difficult position. Just you wait. When you beg me for mercy, I will call my wolf-like sisters over. I will make you afraid of women for the rest of your life. Powell, Broom, what are you two doing squatting here? Seeing that Qin Guang had completely ignored her, Mrs. Smith immediately turned her attention to Powell and Mika. After all, she was filled with anger at the moment and had to find an outlet to vent it. The two of them seemed to be in a terrible state, and it was the perfect target for her to throw a tantrum at. When Powell and Broom saw that she was still like an angry cow, they could neither laugh nor cry. Mrs. Smith, please calm down. If we had a choice, we wouldn't want to sit here either. Powell patted his pants as he stood up with the help of the wall. He shrugged and said helplessly. Perhaps it was because he knew that everyone was done for, Powell felt a little relieved. His words gradually showed that he did not take Mrs. Smith seriously. What do you mean? Mrs. Smith vaguely felt that something was wrong. Broom saw that she still didn't know anything, and Powell didn't seem to be in the mood to explain, so he said, Dear Mrs. Smith, everyone here heard what you said to Mr. Wang backstage just now because the microphone was not turned off. This included your racist remarks, as well as your unilateral statement on behalf of the Guinness Association to ask for a break in cooperation with the Wuxia television station. At that moment, some of the sharp-eyed spectators noticed Mrs. Smith. This was great. The crowd, which was already agitated, immediately burst into an uproar. Fat bitch, get out. So what if I have yellow skin? The girl of the beach. What lousy Guinness. Get lost. We're not playing with you anymore. Who do you think you are? You want to marry our baby Light with that lousy appearance? I've been trying to give birth to baby Light for more than half a year, and I still haven't gotten in line. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? This was a very beautiful, very tall, and very hot woman. Qin Guang silently remembered her face. He was going to discuss life with her after the recording of the program. Other than that, Qin Guang also discovered something else. Human emotions were really a very magical thing. The excitement of the audience in the broadcast hall actually stimulated a lot of faith value. The daily production of faith value of this group of people was about to reach 2,000. There were only about 1,000 people here. What? You all heard it? Yes, Mrs. Smith. Everyone here heard everything you said. On the other side, Mrs. Smith learned from Broom that the sky was falling, and she was frightened by the angry crowd. Her face suddenly turned pale and her whole body trembled. Of course, she knew that in today's world where even the president was black as a so-called upper-class person, there would be serious consequences for publicizing racial discrimination in public. Moreover, this was China. This time it was a big deal. She had lost face, and even the reputation of the Guinness Association would be affected. But how did this happen? How did the people outside hear what I said in the broadcasting room? Mrs. Smith looked at the audience standing up from their seats one by one, as if they were going to attack the stage. She was puzzled. Did I get tricked by that Director Wang? She finally remembered the guy's gloomy expression when she was arguing with Director Wang in the studio. She suddenly understood. You two idiots, why didn't you come in and stop me? Mrs. Smith raised her leg angrily, wanting to kick Powell. Powell dodged nimbly to the side. We tried, Miss Mariana, but we couldn't come in. Qin Guang's goal had been achieved and he didn't want to waste time here. He was just a little worried. It seemed that the recording for the rest of the program would not continue. He only cared about whether his scenes would be broadcasted or not. At this time, Director Wang also walked out. The situation was out of control and he had to calm it down a little. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to explain himself if it really turned into a violent incident. Mr. Qin, your program will definitely be broadcasted. Even if we can't finish recording today, we can continue recording China's 5,000 years of unique skills tomorrow. The program will be changed starting from the next episode. What do you think of a new name for our program? Director Wang said in English in front of Mrs. Smith and the others. Qin Guang gave him a thumbs up. Very good. Very good. Director Wang, that's not what I meant just now. When Mrs. Smith heard that Director Wang was really going to terminate the collaboration, she immediately rushed over to explain. Old Wang took a step back and kept a distance from the rich lady. Comrade Old Wang took a step back and kept a distance from this lady. I've already communicated with the senior leaders of our television station about this matter. What the leaders mean is that we respect your association's decision very much. Since your association wants to terminate the cooperation, of course, we won't force you against your will. Furthermore, this matter was proposed by the chairman himself. When the time comes, the senior leaders of our television station will carefully discuss the specific compensation for breach of contract with your association. Now this matter is no longer up to me. Actually, this matter was not that easy to settle. He was just yelling at Mrs. Smith. However, the rich lady was already in a terrible state of mind. She believed it was true and her whole body almost went limp. She could probably understand Powell and Bloom's despair just now. Mr. Chin, we might need you to appease the audience. After all, we are a nation of etiquette. The crowd's attack was getting more and more intense. There were even 3 or 4 people who had broken through the security and were rushing towards Mrs. Smith. These people were all bald. They were indeed die-hard fans of the Anti-Light Alliance. They were really fanatical. Qin Guang nodded. He did not want his fans to get involved in such a big matter. He had a strong backing and was not afraid of anything, but his fans were just ordinary people. No problem. Qin Guang replied. He took the microphone from Director Wang and walked to the center of the stage. He first stopped the 3 or 4 bald men who were rushing in front of him. All right, that's enough. This D*MN fat woman is done for. Don't stay here and cause trouble. Go back and sit down. Qin Guang reached out and pressed the few young men down. Oh my God. Brother Almighty touched my shoulder. I will never shower again in this life. A bald man with a full beard had tears in his eyes. The other young man, who was also bald but had delicate features, also had stars in his eyes. +1 for not bathing. I'm so happy that I want to faint. A bald man who looked like a pig butcher burst into tears. Qin Guang silently looked at these 3 jokers. He really wanted to find a mirror to look at himself. To be honest, it was quite sad when he thought about it. I must have a physique that attracts jokers. Why are my fans either tomboys or silly bald men? Can't I have a normal die-hard fan? After chasing the bald fans away, Qin Guang stood in the middle with the microphone in his hand. Quiet, everyone be quiet. This was really amazing. The crowd that Dong Qing and Zhu Jun couldn't suppress actually calmed down after a few words from Qin Guang. The power of idols was really amazing. On the other side, Chief Wang saw that Qin Guang had calmed down and felt at ease. He said to Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Smith, go back to the guest seats and rest. No matter what, let's try to finish recording the show today, okay? There are still so many people waiting in the contestants' lounge. You don't want to become an international joke because of this, do you? Wouldn't it be quite embarrassing if word of this got out? Comrade Old Wang's heart ached. He had been a program team director for many years. Although he was not always respectful when dealing with Powell and Bloom, most of the time he was indeed a head lower than them. When he met an association member like the district chairman, he would basically have to bow and scrape. He had never been as unyielding as he was today. It was really sweeping away the gloom and making him feel good. Powell and Bloom also knew that it was meaningless to continue like this, so they tried to persuade him to finish recording today's show. Other things could be discussed in private. There was no such thing as a grudge that couldn't be resolved. The matter was still Qin Guang. At most, they would just give in to him and everything could be discussed. After a short while, the noisy studio finally settled down again. Originally, Qin Guang had planned to leave after recording his segment, but he stayed a little longer. It was because of Chief Wang's request that he stay to hold down the fort. It was definitely not because of the female fan who wanted to give birth to his baby. Chapter 686. Mariana Smith was sitting in the guest seat. The whispers behind her made her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. She felt that those people must be scolding her. The more she thought about it, the angrier and more wronged she felt. Ever since Mr. Smith died and she inherited Smith's jewelry, she had never felt so wronged. She couldn't hide what had happened today. So many people were watching and listening. She could imagine what kind of criticism she would receive when the news spread to the United States. As the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region of the Guinness Association, not only did she not make any contribution to the development of the association, but she also made a fool out of herself because of her own selfish desires. She even used racial slurs in public. This was 100 times more serious than a male model who had a bad personal life. This would even affect the reputation of the entire Smith's jewelry. She would lose her position as the chairman of the Asia-Pacific region of the Guinness Association, and she might even be kicked out of the upper class. How did it become like this? She had no idea what the problem was. Everything had been normal yesterday. She had just fallen in love with an internet celebrity from Wuxia, and he had rejected her without giving her any face. Then she had tried to suppress him and teach him a lesson. She had even called the ghost hand Hiroto Aoyama. How did it become like this in the end? The price of being willful seemed to be too heavy. Her mind was in a trance. Her heart began to ache inside her plump body. It seemed that she was under too much psychological pressure. However, she didn't realize it. She was still immersed in the matter. I didn't do anything wrong. Something must have gone wrong. Mr. Aoyama? Mr. Aoyama? The competition is over. Please leave. Everyone else has left. We have to move the table away. It turned out that Hiroto Aoyama was still in the same position. His hands were pressed on the long table. He was still trying to wake up from the nightmare. Don't touch me, devil. The staff pushed Hiroto Aoyama lightly. Then the ghost hand from Japan screamed as if he had been stung by a wasp. Mariana heard the shout from the stage. She looked up and saw Hiroto Aoyama's pale face, purple lips, trembling hands and cold sweat all over his face. In a trance, Mrs. Smith's mind suddenly became clear. Right, things had turned out this way because Ghost Hand, whom she had high hopes for, had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Chen Guang. If he won, Chen Guang could only leave with his tail between his legs, or kneel at his feet and beg for his forgiveness, and then ask him to give him another chance. It's all this trash's fault. She immediately stood up from her seat. Hiroto Aoyama. You trash. Her plump body was like a fat dinosaur as she charged at Hiroto Aoyama. She had completely lost control of her emotions. Hiroto Aoyama turned around and stared at her blankly. He stared at the person who had saved his life, but for some reason, his mind was filled with the disgusting scene that made him kneel in the toilet and vomit for an entire night. This was a terrible nightmare. She threw herself at me again. I hope I can survive this time and not suffocate to death. Wait, if it's a dream, why didn't I reject her? Am I to be tormented by her in my dreams? F***ck off. You are a filthy, ugly, disgusting, fat woman. Every inch of fat and crease on your body makes me want to puke. Mrs. Smith was stunned. After a short silence, she became even angrier. You, go to hell. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws at Hiroto Aoyama. However, Hiroto Aoyama was no longer afraid. He slapped Mrs. Smith hard in the face and pushed her shoulders hard with both hands, causing her to fall to the ground. I've had enough. I've had enough of you. Hiroto Aoyama summoned the courage that never existed in reality. He looked down at Mrs. Smith, who was paralyzed on the ground. Mariana Smith raised her head and looked at Hiroto Aoyama blankly. She was caught off guard by the sudden burst of courage from this weak puppet. Wrinkles? This ghost hand sure knows how to play. Oh my God, how can there be such a disgusting woman in the world? Is the meaning of her life to constantly disgust others? Doesn't she have any self-awareness? The whispers in the studio, which had finally settled down, boiled up again. Although Mrs. Smith didn't understand what they were talking about, she could feel the disdain in everyone's eyes. Her hair was disheveled and she was in a sorry state. Her eyes were blank, her breathing was getting faster, and her head was buzzing. Even a piece of trash like you dares to disobey me? Hiroto Aoyama didn't seem to be satisfied yet. He took a deep breath and spat at Mrs. Smith's face. She had been holding these words in her heart for almost 10 years. Even if it was just a dream, it was good enough. Thick phlegm was stuck on Mrs. Smith's forehead. She was about to break down. Look at your ugly face. Do you know how disgusting it is when you're on top of me? Shut up. Don't you have money? What do you have other than money? If it wasn't for your money, do you think I would care about you? Bastard. You bastard. Linda. Kill this bastard for me. Mrs. Smith began to call for her assistant. I always thought that your old husband was suffocated to death by you. You. Mrs. Smith pointed at Hiroto Aoyama with trembling hands. Linda's assistant had already rushed over with 2 bodyguards. They had to shut this guy up. At this moment, Mrs. Smith felt a sharp pain in her heart. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted just like that. Linda screamed, Mrs. Smith has a heart attack. Quick. Stop this idiot Hiroto Aoyama. At the same time, the poor assistant began to rummage through her purse. Where's the medicine? Where's the medicine? She couldn't find the bottle after searching for a long time. She simply flipped the purse over and the contents were scattered on the ground. There was still no medicine. She didn't bring any medicine. Mrs. Smith had always had a heart attack, but it hadn't happened for a long time. She actually forgot to bring the medicine. Send her to the hospital. On the other side, Hiroto Aoyama had already been punched to the ground by the 2 bodyguards. The other employees of Smith Jewelry also rushed up to him and held him down. The loud noise in his head gradually subsided, and he finally came back to his senses. He first looked at the uproar on the stage, then at Marianne Smith, who had fallen to the side, Linda, who was angry and anxious, and the other craftsmen he was familiar with. He gradually came to his senses. I'm not dreaming. This is all reality. Oh my God, look at what I've done. The sudden change took another 10 minutes. Mrs. Smith had already been rushed to the hospital, and Hiroto Aoyama was also surrounded by bodyguards. The people of Smith Jewelry had come in aggressively, but left in an extremely embarrassing manner. Fortunately, the audience did not have any objections. Although the time was delayed, it was more exciting than watching a movie. Mr. Powell, shall we continue recording the show? Director Wang asked the two Guinness staff members who stayed behind. Let's record. What can we do? What about you, Mr. Qin? Powell looked at Qin worriedly. He was very concerned about Qin opinion. Qin waved his hand indifferently. It has nothing to do with me. I finished my work. Now I'm just a mascot. You guys just go about your business. What happened to Mrs. Smith could not cause any ripples in his heart. He did not do anything from the beginning to the end. That fat woman was just making a fuss. She deserved a heart attack. She deserved it. None of my business. Bored to death, Qin sat in the studio, but his thoughts had already flown to another place. The faith value of the pencil sharpening world was in place. He just had to wait for the show to go on TV and reap a big harvest. Now the focus of his work had to shift. Just now, Yu Hong had sent a text saying that the piano show had been finalized. It would be performed directly at the National Gallery of Art next Wednesday. This time, the television broadcast would be handled by CCTV, and the online broadcast would be handled directly by Xiaocong. The negotiations were also ongoing for foreign platforms. As for advertising sponsorships, they were not considered for the time being. Everything looked great except for the fact that the time interval was as long as 7 days. It was simply perfect. He was used to busy days, but suddenly he had 7 days of free time. He felt a little melancholy with nothing to do. If it was someone else, they would probably practice hard for 15 hours a day if they were to hold such a high-standard piano show a week later. But this was completely meaningless to the strongest humanoid player in history, Qin. Do I have to waste 7 days in Beijing? Just the thought of it was scary. Wouldn't I be bored to death? I'm a man who's going to become the master of the trichiliocosm. I'm also in a hurry to perfect my body so that I can quickly practice the painting scroll. Otherwise, how am I supposed to keep up with Wenwen's pace? During the previous military exercise, he heard that the conflict between her and the poison sect and the dark sect was getting worse. Who knows, there might be a final battle on that day. Should he just be a spectator then? Moreover, since the poison sect and the dark sect dared to provoke the Wen family, they couldn't possibly not have any backup plans, right? Wen might not even be able to win. Most importantly, in order to cover up the details of the poisoning incident at the Hot Pot restaurant, 7 families and 25 people's lives had been wiped out. This debt had not been settled yet. If he did not account for these things, Qin thoughts would never be at ease. He himself might not be absolutely safe. Just like the last time, the other party had randomly sent 2 Bone Force martial artists to chase after him. In the end, he was lucky enough to escape, and it was all thanks to the gift of Wind God's kick from the Holy Grail. What if those scumbags had evil thoughts again and simply sent Bone Force martial artists? What would he do? Lie on the ground and wait for death? This was also the key reason why he was so anxious and crazy to improve his strength. He was really anxious. Chapter 687. He watched the others challenge Guinness out of boredom while holding his chin and thinking hard. At present, the biggest shortcoming of the 7 perfect cups, the faith value of the pencil sharpening world, depended on today's show. The piano world also depended on the joint performance in the National Gallery of Art 7 days later. If possible, he would make the show in 7 days a global event. He would use even crazier skills than the left and right hands concert so that other piano lovers would not have the courage to compete with him. It doesn't matter if you guys ridicule my artistic level. There is no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. I understand all this. What I want is just the title of the strongest technique, that's all. The other darts world and the sword tower world had already exploded in faith value. The racing world was almost at 30,000. There was not much room for improvement. The pile driver Little Six had a daily production of 38,000 since the birth of the statue of God. So, now that there was still faith value and room for expansion, it seemed that the only thing left was Little Seven with a daily production of 18,000. He silently clenched his fists and looked at his hands. He remembered the process of the birth of the statue of God and suddenly felt a headache. It seemed that only one person playing the piano twice could not continue to leave a deep impression on others. He had to do something else. At least he had to let people know that his hands were the strongest in the world, that they were the most explosive, and that they must be the most perfect pair of arms in the world. So what should he do? Participate in the weightlifting competition? To be honest, if he were to lift weights in his current state, he would most likely sprain his back. His hands and feet were perfect, but he had not trained the other parts of his upper body. Besides, lifting weights did not prove that strength was the greatest, right? The Qilin arm also involved many other factors, such as explosive power. What should he do? The thought of this made his headache even worse. The recording of the show would take about 4 hours. In the middle, some parts of the show that were not very effective would be cut, and some unexpected scenes would be abandoned. It's finally over. I don't know if there will be another episode of this unlucky show. Powell and Bloom walked down from the stage side by side, talking. They were a little dispirited. Bloom sighed. God knows. Why don't we go talk to Mr. Chin now? Maybe he will give in a little? Wait, I have a call. It's from Linda. Powell pulled Bloom back. Bloom urged, hurry up, Mr. Chin is leaving. Powell? What's wrong with you? What are you doing? Your phone fell to the ground. Powell slowly lowered his hand and looked at Bloom with a pale face. Bloom, Mrs. Smith is dead. What? Speak louder. Bloom picked his ears. He had heard it clearly, but he hoped he had misheard. I say, Mrs. Smith is dead. As soon as she arrived at the hospital, she entered the emergency room. However, on the way there, her heart stopped for a short while. She had too many complications. She was too fat and her heart was already riddled with holes. She's dead now. What is the hospital doing? They're already here, but they can't save him? Bloom still couldn't believe it. Powell nodded. Yes, we tried for more than 3 hours, but to no avail. On the other side, Qin Guang, who was about to leave after greeting Chief Wang, also heard their conversation. Chief Wang, I think I heard those two say, Mrs. Smith is dead? Qin Guang tried to ask. How could Comrade Old Wang believe that? He chuckled and said, Ha, Mr. Qin, you really know how to joke. How could someone die from anger so easily? You're really black-bellied to actually curse someone else. *CK. She's really dead. A minute later, Comrade Old Wang could no longer laugh. Even Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Although Su Tao was hateful, wasn't it a little too much for him to die so easily? If you have heart disease, don't be so troublesome, okay? I didn't do anything. You've been courting death all along. Now that you're dead, don't turn into a malicious spirit and come looking for trouble with me. Therefore, people should not be too pretentious. They should also pay attention to maintaining healthy living habits, exercising hard, and paying attention to their figure. Once a person gets fat, it's easy for them to have all sorts of problems. Her ability to withstand pressure was so poor, and she came to provoke me. Now that she's dead from anger, is it my fault? Forget it, I'll go back and burn some yellow paper for her as a souvenir. Some things were just so unimaginable. It was obvious that Mrs. Smith's heart disease was not something new. It had been accumulating for a long time, and today's incident was just a prelude. Things piled up one by one, and finally led to the fact that she had died in the emergency room. If it had been another place, another reason, another time, she might still have died like this. Unfortunately, everything had happened today. It seemed sudden, but in reality it was inevitable. Mr. Qin? Powell rolled his dead fish eyes and wanted to say something to Qin Guang. Qin Guang jumped back. Don't look at me. This has nothing to do with me. What did I do? I only participated in the Guinness conference, won, and was done with it. Don't blame it on me. I'm not going to take the blame. I didn't even touch her a few times from the beginning to the end. I didn't say anything to her either. The one who pushed her down wasn't me, it was that Japanese. He definitely could not take the blame. Although old Master Guang was stubborn, he was not stupid. Powell was embarrassed. That's true. Everyone was watching. Actually, there was nothing wrong with Hiroshi Aoyama. It was all an accident. That's enough. I don't care how you deal with this mess. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Oh no, don't see me again. Hey, Mr. Qin. Powell wanted to say something, but Qin Guang had already disappeared. After a long time, Powell stomped his feet helplessly. I wanted to remind him to be careful of the Tempest family's revenge. Although there are many coincidences in this incident, and we are deeply sorry about Mrs. Smith's death, we will definitely report the truth when we get back. Mr. Qin wants to stay out of it, but this incident started because of him. The Tempest girl will not let it go so easily. Director Wang was curious. What does Mrs. Smith have to do with the Tempest family? Is that family very powerful? Before she married Smith, beside him, Broom kept coughing. Powell realized that he had said too much and quickly shut up. Since there's nothing else, Mr. Wong will leave first. Mrs. Smith must still have a lot of things to do. The headquarters will probably send a new Asia-Pacific chairman in a few days. We'll talk then. The two foreigners ran as fast as they could as they spoke. Why are you talking so much to him? Broom muttered. Powell sighed. Can't you tell? Mr. Chin is a big shot. So what? No matter how big a shot he is there any use in his death? That's true. Powell, we're just small fries. We have to know our place. Although Powell was usually the talkative one, the one who really made the decisions was Broom. Chin Guang ran out of the central TV building alone. It was raining outside, as if it was mourning for the fat woman who had died in a foreign land. But he could not say that he was sad. After all, there was nothing about Marianne Smith that was likable. But he could not deny that his mood was affected. He had even forgotten about the tall, crazy fan who was going to give birth to his child. Hiroyuki Aoyama would definitely meet a tragic end. Even if he was not directly responsible, he was the one who had triggered Mrs. Smith's illness and pushed her to the ground. Actually, he was also a pitiful guy. He had lived like a tortoise all his life. He had finally been brave in his dream, but ended up like this. Perhaps this was his fate from the moment he had chosen to accept Mrs. Smith's sponsorship. It was all fate. In the past, Chin Guang did not believe in fate. But after seeing the bell of fate in the world in a cup, he had no choice but to believe it. Luckily he had the bell of fate. If he really encountered a dead end, he could just ring it again. The after-effects were scary, but there was always a chance for him to choose. But then again, Mrs. Smith was so rich. If she died in Wuxia, the impact would not be small, right? Forget it. Why should I think about it? It has nothing to do with me anyway. Mr. Chin, you look a little absent-minded. Yang Shi, who was sent by Big Beard Deng, looked at Chin Guang worriedly. He had been completely convinced by Chin Guang's theoretical knowledge, so he had planned to play a few roles with Chin Guang today. The two of them were sitting in a cafe. It was still raining outside and soothing music was playing in the cafe. The lights were very bright, but the crowd was sparse. There were a few strong foreigners sitting at the table next to the two, whispering to each other. Come on, Brother Yang, I know you have good intentions, but your roles are too basic. I really can't get excited. Mr. Chin, you can't let your guard down just because you have rich theoretical knowledge. After all, theory and practice are separated by a layer of yarn. Director Deng is really under a lot of pressure now. The more it is like this, the more we have to come up with a perfect performance to shut these people up. Yang, she said earnestly. As a poor director's assistant, it was not easy for him. He could not speak in a heavy tone with Chen Guang. He had to coax and deceive him. This kid quietly became a movie investor and a major shareholder. He simply did not play by the rules. Knocking on the booklet that Yang Shi prepared, Chen Guang replied, Big Brother Yang, I understand what you're trying to say. All right then, you can pick one of the roles that you wrote and I'll play it for you immediately. Although Yang Shi had good intentions and the movie had to be shot, Chen Guang did not want to waste the time before the start of filming. At the end of the day, he had not really shown his skills in front of them. Theoretical knowledge alone could not subdue this warm-hearted Brother Yang. So, it was time to show him a god. When Yang Shi heard this, he also felt that it was a good idea. He flipped through the booklet and decided to find a character that was more suitable for Chen Guang's role in Women. This is it. Have you seen Will Smith's Boxer Ali? Chen Guang nodded. Yes. He had not only seen it, but he had also played this role in the third stage of acting. He had played this role perfectly. After all, once something went wrong, it would blow up. Of course, he did not directly play the role of Boxer Ali. He played the role of Will Smith in the movie. Chapter 688. Very well, then why don't you try to act Ali in the boxing ring? There's no need for lines. There are no lines in the boxing ring. Just act out his confidence, stubbornness, and unyielding spirit. Of course, the eyes in the boxing ring must be aggressive. It would be better if you also have some professional knowledge such as the butterfly steps. Yang Shi said tentatively. He also knew that his request might be a bit difficult. After all, in order to act out the role of Ali, Will Smith also went through a long period of learning. It was impossible for Chen Guang to act it out immediately. Of course, this was also Yang Shi's purpose. He deliberately found a difficult role for Chen Guang to embarrass him and let him know how powerful it was. In addition, the first thing a real professional actor learned when entering the industry was to release himself. This was a public place and professional actors could quickly get into the mood here. But Chen Guang was just an ordinary person. No matter how terrifying the theoretical knowledge he had shown before, it could not hide the fact that he had once dragged the entire Rivers and Mountains crew into the sun for an afternoon with embarrassment cancer. Therefore, in fact, Yang Shi's request buried two traps for Qin Guang. Letting an ordinary person act out a role in the boxing ring in such a public place could stimulate his sense of shame to the greatest extent, but it was also destined that he would act poorly. The worse he performed, the better. In this way, from tomorrow on, he could tie up this dishonest investor and male lead, so that he would willingly accept his closed-door special training. Don't look at little brother Yang Shi, who is always laughing and joking all day long. In fact, he is also a very dark guy. Qin Guang stood up and took off the hat on his head, revealing his shiny bald head. He looked around, and the people sitting nearby all looked at him curiously. Then he did not say much, just smiled at everyone and then lowered his head and said, "Brother Yang, watch carefully." Yang Shi sat on the chair, crossed his legs and looked at him with great interest. He really did not expect that this guy would really act without saying anything. Thinking back to the afternoon when he had almost broken down in order to train Qin Guang's acting skills, Yang Shi couldn't help but sigh. "My brother Qin Guang, how can you be so brave? I'm not talking nonsense with you. The gap between theoretical knowledge and practice is not just a layer of yarn but a mountain. No matter how well prepared you are, you still need a guide like me to take you across the mountains. Indeed, geniuses exist in this world, but they are definitely not you. How am I supposed to pacify him if it gets too awkward? Forget it, with my understanding of him, he's a thick-skinned person. At worst, he'll just pay the money and run." Seeing Qin Guang close his eyes and start preparing his character, Yang Shi's mood gradually rose. He really wanted to know what kind of performance a mysterious actor, who was rich in theoretical knowledge but lacking in practical experience, could perform in public all of a sudden. Suddenly Qin Guang opened his eyes. There was a trace of lingering confusion in his eyes, and a slightly bitter and resentful expression gradually condensed on his face. Yang Shi still maintained the posture of sitting on the chair, looking at Qin Guang with a rather playful expression. "Sure enough, as I expected, my cancer of embarrassment is about to break out. You're a boxing champion who stands in the boxing ring. What the hell is this bitter and resentful expression of yours, as if everyone owes you tens of thousands of dollars?" Then Qin Guang completely ignored the interference of Yang Shi's eyes. His eyes gradually focused and looked forward. His back slightly arched, his hands raised in front of him, and he took a slightly unprofessional defensive stance of a boxer. Yang Shi suddenly couldn't laugh anymore. He thought of a scene in his mind, and also recalled some of the life of boxing champion Ali. There was no doubt that boxing champion Ali was a very complicated person. His life was full of ups and downs. In his career as a professional boxer, he stood in the boxing ring and shouldered too many things that did not belong to boxing. He represented the black people who struggled to walk in that environment at that time. In his professional career, in addition to fighting to the death with opponents in the boxing ring, he also had to face too much pressure from his skin color and religious beliefs outside the ring. He used much more effort than ordinary people, as well as an even more stubborn and strong personality, and finally achieved brilliant achievements in the entire boxing ring under the enormous pressure. But there was no doubt that he rarely felt happy. When he was young, he always felt that the world owed him something. He had clearly won the Olympic gold medal for the United States, and he was a national hero, but he couldn't even eat a simple lunch in a white restaurant. He angrily threw the gold medal into the sea. The unfair treatment made him even more resentful of the world. With this suppressed anger, he threw himself into the professional boxing arena. He used his angry arrogance to vent the anger in his heart and scrupulously inside and outside the boxing ring. He shouldered too much honor, but his skin color brought him endless trouble. It was as if no matter how much he achieved, he would only be inferior to others. He began to be confused, sometimes angry, sometimes self-doubting, and he didn't even know how to prove himself. In his long career, he had done many things to eliminate racial barriers, and he had witnessed the emergence of the first black president with his own eyes. But after all, he was confused, and it lasted for a long time. The boxing champion Ali, played by Will Smith, would obviously never be able to play the boxing champion's true professional level. He was an actor, not a boxer. But Will Smith very well captured the mood of the boxing champion when he was young. At this time, Qin Guang was also playing the young boxing champion who was angry and confused, but hidden in the confusion was stubbornness, and stubbornness made him arrogant to the point of madness. All of a sudden, Qin Guang made his move. His footwork was clumsy, but it didn't seem like it at all. Qin Guang hopped around the coffee table on his tiptoes. Yang Shi clenched his fists tighter and tighter. He finally understood the confusion in Qin Guang's eyes at the beginning. The scenes in the movie gradually emerged in his mind, and unconsciously he merged with the Qin Guang in front of him. He seemed to see Will Smith again, or perhaps the lousy Ollie that was played. Yang Shi's breathing gradually became rapid. What is this situation? Suddenly, the leaping Qin Guang took an extra step forward with his right foot, leaned his upper body to the right, and swung his right hook fiercely from the bottom to the top. But what Yang Shi paid most attention to was the look in Qin Guang's eyes. The moment he punched, the confusion disappeared, and in its place was a decisive and indomitable momentum. Yang Shi stood up abruptly and took a step back. The whole process took less than 30 seconds, but he really did it. In this coffee shop full of strangers and strange looks, he acted like Will Smith's version of Muhammad Ali in the movie. Qin Guang continued walking, and the anger in his eyes grew stronger. He was clearly just punching the air, but it was as if Sonny Liston was really standing in front of him, the former boxing champion who had fallen under his iron fists. The strange looks in the coffee shop also changed. It was really strange. At first, they clearly thought that this person was a madman, but why did it seem like they were watching a real boxing match now? Where was his opponent? Where was he? That's not right. He might be an actor and he's acting on the set. Then are we all extras? The scariest thing about the so-called world-class acting skills was not just that Qin Guang could put himself into the world of the movie. When he unleashed it to the extreme, the invisible world seemed to use him as the origin and gradually spread out, enveloping the people and objects in the space around him into his world, his domain. This was the true horror of the highest level of acting skills. I am an actor. I am the world. Welcome to my world. The tables in the coffee shop turned into boxing rings. In the air, Sonny Liston was retreating step by step, and Qin Guang's fists were closing in. Finally, Qin Guang's body came to a stop as he threw out a heavy punch with an explosion in the air. Everyone was hallucinating. Sonny Liston's phantom seemed to appear in front of him, and then he collapsed. The newly crowned king raised his hands high, waiting to enjoy the cheers of the world. Qin Guang looked back with the frankness and dominance of a young man. Godly acting skills. Yang Shi screamed in his heart. His breathing almost stopped, and he even wanted to kneel down just like that. Roar. The dozens of people in the coffee shop couldn't help but cheer for him in unison, even though he had clearly only defeated the air. Yang Shi's body went limp and he sat on the ground. Before seeing it with his own eyes, he really didn't believe that anyone in the world could reach such a level of acting skills. If anyone else had done the same thing here, the end result would only be a cancer of embarrassment. But he made everyone in the coffee shop live in his play. Oh my God, brother. Are you acting as Ollie? That's right, I know you're acting as Ollie. Although I haven't seen this movie in 10 years, thank you, you brought back memories in my heart. At this moment, a strong black man sitting near the two stood up excitedly. It's too similar, really too similar. Brother, how did you do it? Although your boxing skills are very rusty, and your butterfly steps aren't professional, you really remind me of Will. He's the actor I admire the most, and Ollie is the teacher I admire the most. Thank you for showing me the two of them in such a vivid way. You must be the best actor in the world. Qin Guang smiled and cupped his hands at the black man. Ah, thank you, buddy. Come, let's make friends. Qin Guang raised his coffee, pretending to be wine, and clinked glasses with the people at the table. Having seen many pretentious international friends, like Mariana and Powell, Qin Guang had a good impression of this honest black man. The other black man next to him seemed to be in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 689. How was it? Brother Yang, did you do well? After greeting everyone, Qin Guang sat back in his chair and winked at Yang Shi. Yang Shi was stunned for a long time before he recovered. He put his hands on the table and said, "Luckily you're a man. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll fall in love with you. Brother, you're invincible. I don't want to ask you how you did it. I can't learn it in my lifetime. What happened to you? Are you possessed by a god? Unbelievable, unbelievable, Max Weber. So, are you still worried about my acting skills? Don't talk nonsense. You're mocking me. But if you go back and tell Uncle Big Beard, he probably won't believe you. You forgot to record it." Yang Shi was stunned. "Yeah. But don't expect me to do it again. It's so F***king awkward." F***ck, you actually feel awkward? I thought you didn't feel it at all. Qin Guang shrugged. I don't feel it when I'm acting, but after I'm done, it all comes back. I'm almost at the terminal stage of embarrassment. Luckily no one came to slap my face. Otherwise I'd flip the table. You're really fast at getting into character and out of character. That's for sure. Please call me Best Actor Chin from now on. Forget it. Even if Director Deng doesn't know what's going on, it's already happened. It's good that I understand it. Feels so good. I really want to see with my own eyes how you scared Director Deng on the day of filming. I was a little prepared today, but you still scared me. Finally, after dealing with Yang Shi, Qin Guang could finally relax. The young man was completely kneeling on the ground. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to recover for a while. Although Qin Guang knew that his unreserved show-off would have an impact on his outlook on life, he could only spread his hands. The old man didn't want to either. You forced him to. Otherwise, if you really followed Big Beard's instructions and pestered me all day, what would I do? Qin Guang finished his coffee in 2 or 3 gulps. Just as he was about to run away, the middle-aged black man came over with a glass of wine. Sir, can we talk? Huh. Hello, how can I help you? Qin Guang put down his glass. Yang Shi had already stood up to pay the bill. Well, my name is Bonner Pierce. You can call me Mr. Pierce. I'm a professional boxing coach. Qin Guang looked at the man with great interest. He did not expect that a random act of Ali in a coffee shop could attract a professional boxing coach. The muscular black man from before also came up and said proudly, Mr. Pierce is very famous in North America. He used to be Mr. Mayweather's technical consultant. Qin Guang's interest was immediately piqued. Of course he knew about Mayweather. He was a super famous boxing champion and was known as one of the greatest boxing champions of the century. His fights were worth tens of millions of dollars. If this black guy wasn't bragging, then Pierce was really a big shot. Hello, my name is Qin Guang. Nice to meet you. Qin Guang reached out and shook hands with Pierce. Although the middle-aged black man was old, his arms were exceptionally thick. His palms were also a size larger than Qin Guang's. After the two shook hands, he seemed to be deliberately exerting more strength. Qin Guang remained calm. However much strength you use, I will use the same amount of strength. Ambition does not depend on age, strength does not depend on the size of the arms. You have to know that you are facing the strongest arm in history. After a while, Pierce's face began to turn red. He was shocked beyond words. Although he was now a coach, when he was a professional boxer, he was also famous for his iron fists. He had once won a heavyweight championship belt. Even now he still kept training. His absolute strength was not much worse than when he was young. How could he be suppressed by Mr. Chen's thin arms when shaking hands? Mr. Pierce, we've been shaking hands for too long. Qin Guang saw that Pierce was so tired and reminded him. Pierce awkwardly let go of his hand. His dark palms had been squeezed so hard by Qin Guang that his bones creaked when he moved slightly. When old Pierce recovered, Qin Guang asked, Mr. Pierce, what's the matter? Just say it. You look like a busy man. Pierce looked at Qin Guang again. Earlier, he had felt that this young man's fists were strong. Now that he tried it, he realized that this guy was not just an ordinary person. He was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. With the body of a lightweight or at most a welterweight, the strength in his palms was able to suppress a heavyweight boxing champion who was obviously a size larger than him. What a rare genius. Imagine the scene of a lightweight fighter blasting out a heavyweight's power in the boxing ring. It was simply a killing machine, okay? Mr. Chin, it's like this. Just now, you briefly imitated the scene of Muhammad Ali's fight. It is undeniable that you are a very, very good actor. Although your steps and posture are still lacking, there should be no actor who can do it better than you. Pierce sorted out his thoughts and said. Qin Guang asked Yang Shi to order 2 glasses of wine. He had roughly guessed Pierce's intentions. Anyway, he had nothing to do in the afternoon, so there was no harm in chatting with him. Thank you for your compliment, Mr. Pierce. I am indeed not a professional boxer. Of course, I am also not a professional. Qin Guang looked at Yang Shi's resentful eyes again. Well, I am indeed an actor. Mr. Qin, to be honest, being an actor is a waste of your talent. Has no one ever told you how terrifying your fists are? Pierce had the art of speaking. He deliberately stirred up his emotions, making them impassioned and indignant. Yang Shi, who was next to him, disagreed. Hey, I don't like what you said. What do you mean by a waste of talent? Do you know what kind of actor Qin Guang is? Okay, brother Yang, don't make a fuss here. I won't jump ship. How can I not act in a movie that I spent money on? Qin Guang said this in Chinese. Yang Shi thought about it and felt at ease. He has 60% of the shares. Why should I be so nervous? Just 2 days ago he couldn't wait for Qin Guang to quit. But at this moment his mentality had completely changed. It was Qin Guang's less than 5 minutes of live performance that led to this fundamental change. On the other side, Pierce saw that Qin Guang did not respond to his incitement and was disappointed. He thought that Qin Guang might be a famous actor and was not particularly interested in being a professional boxer. He decided to add fuel to the fire. "Mr. Qin, don't think that I am joking. My eyes have never been wrong. When you punched with a non-standard posture, I actually heard the wind from the friction between the air and your fist." Pierce became more and more excited as he spoke. "You are a natural-born boxer. Since you can play Ali so vividly, you must have some understanding of professional boxing, right? Believe me, as long as you go through my top professional training, I can make you the king of the boxing ring. You have a daunting punch and can even dominate the boxing rings below the middleweight or light heavyweight weight class. You can achieve even more than Mayweather. I have a high degree of confidence in helping you achieve this. Right now, your weakness is the strength of your waist and abdomen, but your legs and hands will be your most advantageous weapons. Your dynamic vision and nerve reaction may still need high-intensity training. But it doesn't matter. I am the most professional in this area. You are born with talent. I have confidence that you can punch more than 600 kilograms. That's right, you Chinese prefer to use kilograms. Imagine you are invincible in the middleweight or lightweight boxing ring, using the heavy cannon that only the heavyweight boxing champion can hit." Qin Guang nearly burst into laughter. Why is this black bro so frank and straightforward? Although Qin Guang knew that it wasn't impossible for him to achieve what Qin Guang said, he still felt that Qin Guang must have been trained in a multi-level marketing organization for Qin Guang to brag so much in their first meeting. "In addition, you don't actually need to train me. My current punching force is 800 kilograms. 600 kilograms is nothing." Of course, Pierce's eyes were indeed sharp. He could see that Zhang Heng's weakness was the waist and abdomen. No wonder he was a top coach. If it wasn't for the fact that it would take a long time to become a top boxer and step onto the world stage, Qin Guang would have been tempted by Pierce's words. After all, as long as he could become the world boxing champion, it would indeed help the Qilin statue absorb a lot of faith. But the effect was too slow. Qin Guang could not wait. Even if he went to the United States with him now, registered as an athlete, started training and fought his way up, it would take at least a few months for him to get a gold belt. "Mr. Pierce, I understand your good intentions and thank you for your appreciation, but now Mr. Chen, don't reject me so directly. I can see that you're very young. Young people shouldn't make decisions for their own lives so quickly. There are many choices in life. When I was young, I almost became a Hollywood action actor, but in the end, I chose the path of professional boxing. It's really extraordinarily wonderful. The feeling of becoming stronger will make you addicted to it. All right, this is my business card. Can I have your email address? We can keep in touch." Pierce was really an excellent lobbyist. Once the person he persuaded showed that he wanted to reject his suggestion directly, he made a decisive decision and planned to take a roundabout way. He knew that Chinese people cared about their reputation. If he wanted to change his words, he would not be able to show it. Today he had to leave enough space for himself. He would be more prepared next time. "Well, anyway, thank you very much for your good intentions. If I have a chance to go to the United States in the future, I will visit you." Qin Guang was polite to him. This was the thick black theory of the Chinese people. After exchanging contact information, Pierce and the others were ready to leave. "If we were not in a hurry to go back to China to participate in the arm wrestling competition, I would really like to find a local club and have a more in-depth talk with you. Please believe me. I have never been wrong. You are a real genius. But it doesn't matter. I will come to you after a while. No matter which city in China you are in, I will come." Pierce said and pointed to his eyes. He was not bragging. He really had a pair of discerning eyes. The few young people with him today were the young boxers he had discovered. These young people looked stronger than Qin Guang, but he was sure that none of them could throw a punch as hard as Qin Guang. In Pierce's eyes, explosive power was an inborn talent. This was especially important for professional boxers. It represented the upper limit of a person. Evidently, the upper limit of Qin Guang's punch was so high that it made everyone's hair stand on end. But it was a pity that he was already a successful actor. He was not an ordinary person who was eager to be successful. It must be difficult for him to give up his current life and become a professional boxer. Top professional boxers were very profitable, and Chinese artists were also very profitable. But it was much easier. He had heard that outstanding young actors in China could easily earn more than 10 million US dollars. If it was him, he would also be reluctant to give up his acting career. So, it must be a long way to persuade him to go to the United States with me. But I will not give up so easily. Pierce was still in a daze until he boarded the plane to Detroit with Chen Guang. Strange? What did I say earlier? Why did Feng Yu decide to fly to Detroit with me? Let me think carefully. What did we talk about? What happened back then? 2 hours ago. Huh. Mr. Pierce, what did you say earlier? Arm wrestling competition? Yes. The annual World Arm Wrestling Competition will be held in Detroit this year. The day after tomorrow, the world's strongest men will gather together. This is a grand event in the world of arm wrestling. What? Mr. Chin, are you interested? Are there any rules for the registration? No. There are more than 10,000 contestants. The contestants will register on the spot and compete on the spot. If they win, they will advance to the next round. Of course, the ones who could truly win the championship were the publicly acknowledged powerhouses. I was also a strong contender for the championship when I was young. Now, I am going there to let the youngsters see the world and see if I can find some good seedlings. Interesting. This is interesting. Qin Guang's eyes became brighter and brighter. Pierce felt his eyes were dazzling. This was truly a case of wearing out iron shoes and fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. What better way to prove that his arms were invincible than to win the World Arm Wrestling Competition and become the undisputed king of arm wrestling? This was simply a shortcut to the heavens placed in front of him, okay? Thinking about his thin arms, thin legs and small body, he ended up rubbing those strong men who were as strong as elephants on the ground. At the same time, he mobilized the Internet Water Army and stirred up this matter. If he did a good job, wouldn't he become a Buddha? Then, Mr. Pierce, I will see you on the plane. Qin Guang said goodbye to Pierce and quickly went to find his connections. Time was tight and he had to use some extreme measures. Fortunately, his identity as the director of the Guangdong General Administration was extremely special, and he could go abroad at any time. When he had just been appointed to this position, his long-term visa had been handled through special channels. He didn't know which old man had personally handled it and used the highest level of connections. As for the plane tickets, the plane that Pierce and the others were originally going to take had no empty seats. Through the coordination of the airline's executives, they forcibly moved a seat for him. After that, he boarded the plane to Detroit with Pierce. This was truly a capricious trip that could be taken away at will. Qin Guang finally realized the benefits of being a big shot. The convenience of traveling was not something that ordinary people could imagine. If he was still a poor loser, he would not be able to board the plane so quickly. Pierce and the others were sitting in front of him. Qin Guang had discussed with them that after arriving in Detroit, he only needed to travel with them. The day after tomorrow and the day after that, he would go to the arm wrestling competition to show off. After that, he would immediately rush back and take part in the piano performance. He was really defeated by his own wit. Hello, passengers. The plane is about to take off. To ensure flight safety, please check whether your phones, tablets, and other electronic devices are turned off. Thank you for your cooperation. The sweet bilingual voice of the flight attendant came from the cabin. Qin Guang quickly turned off his popcorn 5S. Strange, why can't I get through to Mr. Chen's phone? Director Wang of the Guinness Conference Program Team of Central TV's Department 13 stared at his phone with a blank expression. Because of the sudden situation during the program recording, he had been busy for 3 to 4 hours. After he was done, he finally remembered to call Qin Guang to remind him that Powell had mentioned something about the Tempest family. Although he did not know what exactly was going on, it was reasonable to inform him. But Qin Guang's phone was already turned off, and he could not get through to him. Forget it, I'll send him a text and inform Xiao Lu from Qingguang Brokerage. That should be foolproof, right? Comrade Wang said. Maybe, probably there won't be any trouble? It's only been a few hours. He can't be flying to America already, right? Doesn't he have a piano performance in a few days? We just talked about this at the meeting. Wow. What? What did you say? Mr. Chin went to America. He just boarded the plane? Oh my. What the F***? How could he just fly away like that? 2 minutes later, the Fruit 7 that Comrade Wang had just bought fell to the ground and smashed into pieces. Qin Guang lay in the first-class seat and tidied up the backpack next to him. Passport, ID, Heavenly Holy Grail, toiletries, UBS black card that could be used worldwide, cell phone, laptop, 3 pairs of underwear to change into, a Hawaiian short dress suit, and 4 pairs of 1-1 special medicine kits that he carried with him at all times. Very good, he had everything he needed. Steady. Calculating the time, he should be able to gather about 600,000 faith points by the time he reached Detroit. To ensure that nothing went wrong, Qin Guang decided to bravely do something. That's right, he was going to challenge the world within the Beggar's Special Training Cup for the second time. In terms of pure arm strength, he was indeed invincible, and the strength of his arm bones was not a problem. But if it was arm wrestling, he would be at a natural disadvantage in terms of weight. Then he would have to use his other hand to hold the table to stabilize his body. The muscles that needed to be mobilized would not only be his arms, but also his pectoral muscles, which would create a terrifying pressure. Right now, his chest, abdomen, and back were only slightly stronger than the average person's. If he relied on his two arms to act cool and his pectoral muscles were torn, it would be a huge problem. As for how the world within the Beggar's Special Training Cup would ravage his pectoral muscles, Chen Guang decided not to think about such a terrifying scene. In short, he had to endure the most bitter of hardships. Time was of the essence, and he had no other choice. Chapter 690. As soon as he stepped on the oily ground and stretched, Chen Guang felt refreshed. Someone once told him that the air in foreign countries smelled particularly fresh, but he didn't believe it. Today he finally experienced it himself. With his nose, which was comparable to an analytical instrument, he came to the following conclusion. It's really fresh. The oxygen ion content is at least 1/10,000th higher than in China. Well, this was pure nonsense. It was all a psychological effect. Besides, there must be cities with good air quality in the United States, but certainly not Detroit, which used to be a heavy industrial city. Pierce was particularly enthusiastic. He even wanted to drag Chen Guang to his club as soon as he got out of the car. He firmly believed that as long as he let this young man walk around the club and see the other young men working hard in pursuit of their dreams, and then look at the achievements of boxing champions like Mayweather, Pacquiao, and Holyfield, all of them, he would be able to do it. Finally, he would use the simplest and easy-to-learn technique to teach him the correct way to exert force, allowing him to punch with half of the techniques of a professional boxer. Then he would definitely understand how terrifying the lethality of his fists were. For others, it might be a victory that they had to fight for with their lives, but for him, it might just be a matter of one punch. God is really unfair. But this was also good. He had to first let him know that it was not difficult to become a boxing champion, and then he could arouse this young man's interest. Pierce became more and more excited as he thought about it. He even wanted to jump and walk, and he forgot about the jet lag. However, the veteran netizen Lord Guang said, "Mr. Pierce, don't panic. Let me buy a phone card first. You can skip meals for a day, but you can't skip the internet for half a day. Mr. Chin, my club is also very famous in Detroit. After we get there, if you are interested, we can try the entry-level special training today. You have to know that if ordinary boxers invite me to do special training for them before the game, my fee is $10,000 a day." Pierce said proudly. With his status in the North American boxing world, his private special training was really worth $300,000 a month. Only top boxers could afford to invite him. Chen Guang knew that Su Tao was fond of talents, and he could also understand the latter's feelings. The more one's eyesight was, the more they would be able to understand the value of that simple punch. Even if they saw the same thing, everyone's thoughts were completely different. Pierce saw the shadow of him becoming a boxing champion. Wu Shan even knew the number 800 kilograms, but he had never thought about it in his mind. But Chen Guang really had no intention of becoming a boxing champion. So he said awkwardly while fiddling with his SIM card, "Well, Mr. Pierce, we just flew half the world and our biological clock is not quite right now. Why don't we take a good rest?" "Oh no, we can't do this. The arm wrestling competition is tomorrow morning, and it's 11 a.m. right now. From my experience, we can't sleep now, absolutely not. You have to at least last until 9 p.m., and then get a good night's sleep. We'll leave tomorrow at 6 a.m., and we'll arrive at the competition venue around 8 p.m. When it came to adjusting the biological clock, Pierce obviously had more say. Chen Guang was also helpless. The old man's words were too reasonable, and he had no choice but to accept it. Actually, he had other plans. The laboratory where Sun Xiaoxuan did her internship was in a university in a small town near Detroit. After the arm wrestling competition the day after tomorrow, he planned to take a stroll in Sun Xiaoxuan's laboratory. Calculating the time, it was almost time for her to go back to China. If they could make it in time, he would go back with her. Thinking about it, Sun Xiaoxuan must be quite depressed. She was introduced to this laboratory by her relatives, and she stayed there for the whole summer. If he suddenly appeared in front of her, she would be overjoyed, right? She might also be so excited that she directly jumped into his arms, right? Alas, if it were in the past he would definitely hold her tightly with peace of mind. But now there was still a knot in his heart. Unlike other girls, Sun Xiaoxuan, a girl from the Jiangnan region, was really too innocent and cute, and people could not bear to hurt her. If he had to make her sad, he might as well start to keep a distance from her now. It was better than pushing her away when she was beyond redemption, right? Alas, otherwise he would secretly look at her and then turn around and leave. He did not know if he could still face her with the same state of mind as before next semester. Thinking about it, it was still difficult. Ever since the end of the final exams, too many things had happened, making people unable to help but sigh. Not even 2 months had passed, but it gave him a feeling as if a lifetime had passed. This couldn't be blamed on others. Chen Guang had lived in the Sea of Moments for a whole 200 years, and after coming out, he hadn't seen Sun Xiaoxuan for a long time, so it was inevitable that he would feel a sense of distance. He had forgotten that he had lived as an old monster in the Sea of Moments, but for Sun Xiaoxuan, it had only been less than 2 months. Moreover, he could chat with him from time to time on the internet, and he often saw and heard news about him on the internet and in the class chat. For Sun Xiaoxuan, Chen Guang had never left, and his shadow had never faded. On the contrary, because of the distant ocean, his longing had continuously deepened. Many things had indeed happened to Chen Guang, but the only things that were reported were Jin Shirui and Zhuo Jingxi. Sun Xiaoxuan did not care about what happened between Chen Guang and Jin Shirui. In her heart, she unconditionally chose to believe every word that came out of Chen Guang's mouth. What she really cared about was the words that Chen Guang had said to Zhuo Jingxi at the press conference. She remembered Gao Ye's warning that teacher Zhuo was definitely interested in Chen Guang, so she had to be careful. She somewhat regretted not paying attention at that time, and it turned out that teacher Zhuo had indeed beaten her to it. Although she did not know what the relationship between the two was, Sun Xiaoxuan did not have the courage to take the initiative to ask either of them. She was afraid that she would get an answer that would make her despair. But she knew that Zhuo Jingxi had definitely gone further than her. But even if she knew, what could she do? She had missed such a good opportunity in the hotel outside Wujing City Hospital. What else could she do? If she did not have to finish the experiment here, she would have returned to China a long time ago. Now she was more anxious than anyone else. The only good news was that she heard that teacher Zhuo had also come to the United States. It seemed that he was a small leader in a university laboratory in California as a photocatalyst laboratory. It seemed that he would not be returning to China for a while. I will not give up like this, nor will I easily admit defeat. Since you took advantage of the fact that I went abroad first, then don't blame me for rushing back before you and taking back the Chen Guang that belongs to me. Even if you are my teacher, I will not give up an inch. It is precisely because you are my teacher that I will not easily admit defeat. There is no reason for a teacher to steal a student's boyfriend. In Sun Xiaoxuan's previous 20 years of life, she had never had such a resolute thought. She was always so weak, trying hard to understand and tolerate everyone around her, and was willing to believe in everyone. Even when she encountered Pan Jiang, it did not cast too much of a shadow in her heart. She did not hate Pan Jiang that much. But this time it was about her love, and she did not want to retreat or admit defeat. She recalled what Gao Ye had said in her heart again and again. Although you are not as tall as teacher Zhuo, and you are not as voluptuous as her, you are a different woman from her. You are Sun Xiaoxuan, the belle of the class that has been underestimated. Teacher Zhuo is tall and voluptuous, but you are also petite and cute. It is only because of Chen Guang's annoying school belle best friend, Wenwen, that you are overshadowed in Jinhuan College. You are too low-key yourself. If you dress up a little, even if the entire Gokyo University were to choose a school belle, there would still be a place for you. Chen Guang is very outstanding, but you are not bad either. Besides, we have been classmates for 3 years, so we know each other very well. Lin Jingwei secretly told me that there are so many porn videos in that guy's computer. You should be braver and cook the rice for him. How can he not admit it? You know that he is a responsible person. People change. Chen Guang had been through a lot during this period of time, and he had changed a lot. Sun Xiaoxuan was facing the risk of losing Chen Guang, as well as her best friend Gao Ye's constant encouragement, so she had been trying her best to become tougher and more aggressive. Living in the more fashionable and free United States, she also began to learn to put on some light makeup. Female guards always put on makeup when they liked them. This was an unchanging truth. Sun Xiaoxuan had also grown up. She could not accept that kind of heavy makeup style, but with her foundation a little light makeup was just right. Now, when she walked on the foreign campus, she was filled with the elegance of an Eastern beauty. In the past 2 months she had been pursued by many brave and heroic foreign boys, but she already had someone in her heart, so they all hit a wall. Today she was still beautiful. The experiment had entered the final stage, and she also began to participate in the final draft of the thesis. After finishing her morning work early, she rested her head on her chin and looked at the white clouds outside the window. She thought to herself, what is he doing now? He's really good at making trouble. He actually went to act in a movie again. It's incredible that he has become a big celebrity in 2 months. I'm getting further and further away from him. There will definitely be a lot of female fans harassing him. This guy can't be secretly happy at the pictures of female fans every night, right? Achoo. Chen Guang sat on Pierce's MPV and sneezed violently. Who's cursing me? He rubbed his nose and thought about it. Then he finally remembered to open WeChat. 30 seconds later he was dumbfounded. The Tepester family? The Witch of Science, Nicole Tepester? What the hell? F***CK, a family of Frankenstein geeks. Did it have to be so scary? Great-great-grandfather had been a lab assistant for that super terrifying Tesla? The family had the handwritten notes of Nikola Tesla, who invented alternating current and suspected to be the mastermind behind the Tunguska explosion. The entire family had been Frankenstein geeks for generations? Great-great-grandfather had died in an experimental accident while deciphering Tesla's notes. How tragic. Great-great-grandfather had been blown up again. How tragic. Great-great-grandmother had been blown up together. How inhumane. His parents had also been blown up. How tragic. Now the entire family was only left with the last descendant. Nicole Tepester, who blew up the school at the age of 8, was now the famous Witch of Science in North America. She was actually the niece of that unlucky Marianne Smith. Marianne's surname was Tepester before she married Smith. You guys are poisonous. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Wrinkling his nose, Qin Guang seemed to have smelled an explosion in the air. This was too much. With such important news he was in a dangerous situation. The crazy Witch of Science, Nicole, would definitely find a way to avenge her last relative, Marianne. After all, when she was very young, her parents had died in an experimental accident. Nicole, who was an orphan, was raised by her aunt, Marianne Smith. At the same time, this generous aunt also funded her to continue the research of this terrifying family. Putting himself in Nicosia's shoes, if he were in her shoes, he would definitely try his best to blow up the culprit into the sky. Alright, even though Hiroyuki Aoyama was the one who pushed Mrs. Smith down, I have to take the blame now. Now I can't go abroad, especially not to America. But right now I'm sitting on the road in Detroit, okay? Should I just go home now? Qin Guang wanted to retreat. After all, this Tepester family was extraordinarily terrifying. They were too explosive. This whole family is a walking bomb in human form, okay? How could they live like this? Couldn't they just die of old age and illness in their beds? If you have something to say, then say it nicely. Don't drag me down with you. But it wasn't easy for him to make a trip to America. Such a good opportunity to show off with his Kirin arm was right in front of him. If he did it well, he would have a huge harvest of faith points. He really couldn't bear to give it up just like that. This was as awkward as when a buddy with diarrhea rushed into the toilet with great difficulty, only to find out that it was a women's toilet. Did he want to pull up his pants and leave? But the arrow was already on the bowstring and he had no choice but to shoot it. Even if he found out that it was a women's toilet, he had to shoot it out. Besides, since he was already here, she couldn't possibly find him in just 2 or 3 days, right? Also, look at this photo of Nicosia Teppert. She's clearly a delicate girl with big wavy blonde hair, blue eyes and big wavy hair. This old man has full power against beautiful girls. As long as she dares to cause trouble, she'll be charmed to death in minutes. She looked so cute, so she definitely wouldn't be too cruel. Her Frankenstein genes should have pretty much degenerated, right? Alright, I'm just spouting nonsense. I'm still a little panicked, but I can't just turn around and run away after coming here for nothing, right? Probably, nothing will happen, right? Anyway, I just have to be more vigilant. I'm not a soft persimmon that can be pinched flat by anyone. Just as he hung up on Lu Xiaoyang's WeChat, Qin Guang's phone rang again. Wu Tong had sent another message. After reading Wu Tong's message, he only had one thought in his mind. Life is already so difficult, so why do you still have to torture me like this? Did I accidentally knock the bell of destiny when I was sleeping one day? I'm just taking a stroll abroad and planning to show off to my heart's content. Why are there so many problems? Wu Tong's message was like this. I couldn't get through to you on the phone just now, so I could only tell you through WeChat. We just had an intense exchange of fire with terrorists in Beijing. They're from the shattered world. According to reliable information, Xuelin's revenge operation has already caused heavy damage to the shattered world. They've decided to take revenge. Furthermore, the matter of you and I dealing with Sergio should have been leaked. For the time being, their eyes are on me, but you know that I don't have the ability to do so. They should be able to find some clues. Therefore, I'm worried that they'll suspect you sooner or later and you might be exposed. During this period of time, you must be well behaved and don't go abroad. Chen Guang silently put down his phone and looked at the blue sky and white clouds of Detroit outside the car window. He also looked at the peaceful abandoned factory buildings. There were wolves in front and tigers behind. This time he had fallen into a fire pit. I'm really King Hell's three-headed flame golden armored howling celestial hound. Chapter 691. Mr. Chin, what's wrong? Are you sleepy? It's fine. How about you take a nap at the club? You can sleep for about half an hour but no more than that. Otherwise you won't be able to sleep at night. Don't oversleep. I'll get someone to wake you up. When Pierce saw Chen Guang's unsightly expression, he initially thought that he was too passionate and forced Chen Guang to train with him. It's fine, Mr. Pierce. I'm not blaming you. I'm really thankful for your hospitality and invitation. It's just that I ran into some trouble. Chen Guang forced a smile and explained. Since he knew that he was in danger, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles if he continued to sit in Pierce's car. There was no doubt that Pierce was a good person. If he continued to stay with them, he would become a bigger target. On the other hand, he would bring them into huge trouble and might die at any time. After thinking about it, Chen Guang felt that he had to separate from Pierce and the others. This was America after all. It wasn't his territory. The disadvantages of being in a foreign land were obvious. The influence of China's military here was far less than in China. They wouldn't be able to provide him with any substantial help. He was in a dangerous situation now. He couldn't bet on the fact that the other party wouldn't find him so quickly. The other party was the world's top assassin organization and the Witch of Science. What if they were really that crazy? Pierce didn't know how terrifying the trouble Chen Guang was talking about was. He said confidently, "It's fine, Mr. Chin. I'm not bragging, but there's no trouble in America that I, Pierce, can't deal with." Seeing how reckless he was, Chen Guang didn't know whether he should be touched or speechless. No. Mr. Pierce, I can't drag you into my trouble. Stop the car by the side of the road. I have to get out. If everything goes well, I'll appear at the wrestling competition tomorrow. We'll contact each other then. Now that he was in a dangerous situation, if Chen Guang continued to participate in the wrestling competition, he would be courting death. Although it was a great pity, since things had already come to this, he might as well give up for the time being. Once he survived this ordeal, he would pay out of his own pocket and increase the prize money for the participants. Then he would organize a worldwide arm wrestling competition. There was no need to risk his life. Why is that? Pierce was anxious. They would arrive at his club in 10 minutes. He really didn't want to let them go just like that. No reason, Mr. Pierce. Time is of the essence. Stop the car. I'm in more trouble than you know, but I can't tell you. Chen Guang's expression became more and more serious. Pierce's brows furrowed even tighter. The more Chen Guang behaved like this, the more he felt that he might miss this rare genius. No, you may not know my status as a well-known boxing coach in North America. I have a lot of celebrity friends, politicians, entrepreneurs, and even senior agents of the CIA. No matter what it is, I can help you. You are my friend and a genius that I have high hopes for. I won't let you go so easily, really. Mr. Pierce, if you don't stop the driver, I'm going to jump out of the car. Foreman, drive a little faster. Make it 160. Chen Guang was confused by this stubborn brother. Big brother, I'm not joking with you. Can you be more serious? We're in a really bad situation. Don't make trouble. Facing the stubborn Pierce was a headache for him. While the two of them were arguing in a parking lot next to a fork in the road about 5 minutes away, there were 4 commercial vehicles and a container truck with a colorful, postmodern punk style, parked on both sides of the road. Chen Guang's worries were not wrong. The World Breaker and Nicoise Teppert's movements were faster than he had imagined. In fact, as early as when he got on the plane from Yenjing to Detroit, the two parties already knew his itinerary from the airline's database. Through different means, they found out that he got on the commercial car of the famous professional boxing coach Pierce after getting off the plane. Both parties had the same target, and their actions were the same, which was to ambush him on the road from the airport to the Pierce Club. The traffic at this intersection was complicated and the road was narrow. Pierce's car would make a right turn here, and the road would suddenly narrow, so he would definitely slow down here. He would hide the car in the roadside parking lot, but it was close to the road. When the time came, he would definitely be able to catch Chen Guang off guard. Nicoise lay flat in the driver's seat of the container truck, her fingers tapping on the keyboard beside her in boredom. The famous sorceress of science looked no different from an ordinary girl. Although she was beautiful, she did not care about her appearance. She was wearing a sloppy, long, loose t-shirt and a pair of pajama pants. She didn't even wear shoes or a bra. She was sleepy and had dark circles under her eyes. Ever since she learned of her aunt's death, she had not slept well for a single minute. In one day, she drove this heavy truck across a distance of 1,500 kilometers, just to rush to Detroit to ambush Chen Guang. There was no seat in the front passenger seat, but a huge operating platform covered with all kinds of buttons. She called this car Nicoise's Mobile Fortress. This car represented her greatest achievement as a sorceress of science. The entire truck contained at least dozens of powerful weapons and dozens of sophisticated modern information equipment, all of which were the results of her research and development. In addition, this mobile fortress, which was a combination of semi-artificial intelligence, could be completely controlled by her alone. The weapons on the car were very characteristic of the Tempest family. They were powerful but very unstable. They were far more informational than the weapons used by ordinary armies. They mainly used explosions such as honeycomb bombs, self-exploding bees, ant bombs, electronic heat-sensing grasshoppers, and so on. The biggest characteristic of this family was that their desire to create and destroy was equally strong, but they were extremely dissatisfied with mature and stable things. They were eager to pursue excitement, and could even be said to be crazy about the unstable surprise. 300, 299, 298. She was counting down the time it would take for Pierce's business car to pass. As the sorceress of science of the Tempest family, she did not want to waste a single second of her time. Waiting for someone like this, even if it was only for a few minutes, was a great pain. Wasting time was equivalent to slow suicide for her. Boring, really too boring. She decided to try to hack into the electronic devices near her car, such as the mobile phones of the people sitting in the business cars parked on the other side. Using their microphones, she could eavesdrop on what they were talking about. Her fingers typed randomly on the keyboard. About 30 seconds later, she quietly cracked the seemingly solid security defense system of the mobile phones. The conversation that came from the microphones made her eyes narrow. Old 5, according to the boss, we must ensure that Chen Guang is alive. Is that right? That's right. In one of the 4 business cars, World 5 and World 6 were talking in a low voice. Nicole's eyes suddenly lit up. No wonder this guy dared to come to the United States so quickly after killing my aunt. What a cunning bastard. He must have known that I would take revenge and thought that it was better to take the initiative than to defend passively. So, this is a trap he prepared for me. The people in those cars are helpers that he hired with a lot of money. You've really underestimated me, Nicosia. I'll make you pay. I will take the initiative to gain the upper hand. Nicole's fingers slowly placed on the keyboard, and her eyes flashed fiercely. What a beautiful misunderstanding. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.